October 11th, 1492. Night presses down on the Atlantic like a lid. The ocean isn't roaring, it's breathing, slow and heavy, lifting 3 wooden ships and setting them down again and again, as if deciding whether to keep them or swallow them whole. The Santa Maria, the Pinta, and the Nina groan with every swell, their hulls flexing, their ropes creaking, the sound of wood under strain filling the darkness like a warning that never quite becomes a scream. These ships are small. Smaller than your instincts want them to be. Barely longer than a modern tennis court. 90 men are packed inside them. Living bodies pressed into spaces meant for cargo. Not months of human fear. The smell is the first thing you'd notice if you were there. 33 days without bathing. Salt crusted into hair and beards. Food that started rotting weeks ago. Bilge water sloshing in the dark below. A foul soup of seawater, waste, and decay. Every surface is damp. Every breath tastes like salt and old wood. Some men whisper prayers, not loudly, not proudly, but the way people pray when they're bargaining. Others whisper different plans, ideas about knives in the dark, about turning the ships around, about ending this before the sea ends them. Most just stare into nothing, into a black horizon that never changes, wondering if the stories are true, if the ocean really does drop away at the edge of the world, and on the deck of the Santa Maria stands Christopher Columbus, watching the water like it might blink first. He's been doing this for hours, scanning for signs that most of the crew barely believes in anymore. Birds, floating branches, a shift in the color of the sea. Anything that suggests land is closer than death. He knows how close this is to ending. 4 days now. The threat of mutiny has hung in the air heavier than the humidity. The men know they've gone too far, or at least farther than they were promised. What they don't know, what Columbus has made sure they don't know, is just how far they really are from home. He's been keeping 2 records of the voyage. One real, one fake. The real one stays hidden. The fake one gets read aloud. Smaller distances, safer numbers. Because the truth would have shattered morale weeks ago. They think they're sailing toward Asia, toward Japan, toward the outskirts of China. They imagine spice markets and silk robes and golden cities described in travelers' tales passed around European docks. They don't know that every map in their heads is wrong. They don't know that the land they're about to see isn't Asia at all. Not even close. Columbus doesn't know either. That's the strange thing. Nobody on these ships understands what's about to happen. Not the sailors clutching their rosaries. Not the captains commanding the other vessels. Not even the man whose name will be burned into history. They all think they're on a familiar path, just extended a little farther than usual. They don't know they're about to collide with something that doesn't fit into any of their categories. In a few hours, a lookout named Rodrigo de Triana will see a pale shape shining in the moonlight. A cliff, a shoreline, solid land. And with that single cry, the world will tilt. But the version of this moment you learned in school is clean, heroic, a brave explorer discovering a new world, a neat beginning to a story called progress. That version has been polished smooth over centuries, scrubbed of confusion and fear and unintended consequences until it barely resembles the night we're standing in now. Because the real story is messier, darker, stranger. What if the man credited with discovering the Americas never understood what he'd found? What if he died believing he'd reached Asia? What if this wasn't discovery at all, but an accident, a wrong turn that smashed 2 worlds together so violently that neither would ever recover? And what if the most important outcome of this moment had nothing to do with gold or maps or empires, but with things no one could see? Bacteria, viruses, seeds, animals, invisible passengers that would move faster and kill more people than any army ever assembled. This night, October 11th, 1492, is the last night the world is truly separate. 2 hemispheres that evolved apart for over 10,000 years, each with their own crops, animals, diseases, and destinies, are drifting toward each other in the dark. They don't know it yet. They're still breathing different biological air, living in different historical timelines that in a few hours, that separation will end. Oh, stay here in this darkness for a moment longer. Feel the slow roll of the ships, the tension in the men's shoulders, the quiet certainty in Columbus's mind that he cannot turn back now, because there is nothing left for him behind them. Before the sun rises, before the anchors drop, before the word land tears through the night, this is still just a gamble hanging in the balance. The cry cuts through the darkness like a blade. Tierra, tierra, land. The word jumps from ship to ship, carried over black water and startled hearts. Men stumble out of sleep, trip over ropes, grip the rails with white knuckles, and stare west, afraid that if they blink the shape will vanish like all the others. But this time it doesn't. It holds. A darker darkness against the stars. A solid interruption in the endless sea. Anchors splash into the water. The ships rock and settle, tethered now to something real. No one dares approach the shore in the dark. The sea is forgiving right now, but everyone knows how fast it can turn. So they wait. 90 men hovering between terror and relief, floating just offshore, listening to waves slap gently against hulls that have been punished for a month straight. Columbus doesn't sleep. He paces. He stares. He replays the last decade of his life in his head, the rejections, the humiliation, the years of begging at courts that laughed him out of their halls. He thinks of the letters he carries for rulers who may not even exist anymore. He thinks of silk and gold and spices, of returning home vindicated, transformed, untouchable. Whatever this land is, it has saved him. That much is already true. As the eastern sky begins to pale, the island takes shape. First a thin line, then color, then depth. White sand catches the early light and seems to glow. Palm trees sway gently, their silhouettes clean and unreal against the soft blue of morning. Inland, the forest rises in layers of green, so dense it looks almost artificial, as if someone painted it there for effect. The water is clear in a way the Atlantic never was, shallow and bright. Schools of fish flickering just beneath the surface. After weeks of gray and blue and endless motion, it looks impossible. Too calm, too alive, too perfect. Small boats are lowered into the water. Oars dip silently. The men row toward shore wearing their best clothes, ridiculous layers of wool and linen in a tropical heat they don't yet understand. Columbus stands at the front, armored, polished, gripping the royal banner like a talisman. This is not just a landing. It's a performance, a legal act, a ritual meant to turn sand into property. When his boots touch the water, it's warm, shockingly warm, nothing like the cold Atlantic they crossed. He wades forward, the surf lapping at his legs, and steps onto the beach. Behind him, banners are planted in the sand. Words are spoken, long, formal words in Spanish, invoking kings, God, and authority. He claims the island and everything on it for a distant crown thousands of miles away. N01 listening understands a single syllable. From the edge of the forest, figures watch. Men and women and children, their skin the color of the earth and sun, bodies painted, eyes wide. They saw the ships yesterday, huge shapes on the horizon, larger than anything they had ever built, sails catching the wind like wings. All night they argued. Spirits? Visitors? Enemies? Traitors? The elders urged patience. You don't rush toward the unknown. You observe it. Now the unknown has come to them. The strangers look wrong. Too pale, too covered. They shine in places, metal flashing in the sunlight. They move stiffly, awkward in the shallow water, unsure of their footing. Powerful, yes, but also strange and clumsy, like creatures built for a different world. Slowly, cautiously, the islanders step forward. Hands open, no weapons raised. This is how you greet outsiders. You show them you come in peace. They bring gifts, parrots bright as living flames, soft cotton, small carved objects. These aren't offerings of submission. They're invitations. This is how you begin a relationship. The Spanish respond with their own gifts. Glass beads, red and blue and green, perfect spheres that catch the light. Tiny brass bells that sing when shaken. Cheap things in Europe. Mass-produced. Almost worthless. Here, they are miracles. Glass that doesn't shatter. colors trapped in solid form. Sounds that ring like magic. Both sides smile. Both sides believe they are winning. Columbus watches everything. He watches how easily the islanders give, how quickly they trust. He notes the small pieces of gold worn as ornaments, the casual way they trade them for trinkets. That night, in his journal, he will write that these people would make good servants, that they could be conquered with very few men, that they have no real weapons. He will also write that they are generous, gentle, and kind. He doesn't see the contradiction. What he also doesn't see is the fear mixed with curiosity on the other side. The way the islanders whisper among themselves about the strangers' metal skins and thundersticks. The way they notice that these visitors don't know which plants are safe to eat, can't read the currents, don't understand the land beneath their feet. Strong in some ways, helpless in others. Both sides misunderstand everything. The Spanish think they've reached the edge of Asia. The islanders think these visitors will trade, then leave like others before them. No one understands that this meeting is not temporary, that it is not balanced, that it is not something that can be undone. This morning feels peaceful, curious, almost gentle. The beach is quiet except for waves and soft voices and the ringing of bells. But underneath it, something irreversible has already begun. Seeds are being planted that no one can see yet. Not in the sand, but in bodies, in blood, in assumptions about power and ownership and humanity. Before we go any further with the strangers, before the story turns sharp and dark, we need to stop and truly see the world they've stepped into. Not the paradise Columbus imagined. Not the emptiness Europeans later pretended existed. But the real place, the real people, the civilization that had been growing here for centuries, unaware that this morning would become the beginning of its end. The bells are still ringing softly when you realize something important. This place isn't empty. It never was. The beach where the Spanish stand isn't the edge of the world. It's the front door of someone else's home. Paths lead inland. Smoke curls faintly above the trees. Somewhere beyond the palms, people are cooking, talking, arguing, laughing, living ordinary lives that didn't expect to be interrupted by history this morning. The island the Spanish had just claimed has a name. Not a European one, not something written on a map yet, but a real name spoken aloud for generations. Guanahani. And it is only one node in a web that stretches across the Caribbean like an invisible net. The people who live here don't think of themselves as isolated. Water isn't a barrier to them. It's a road. They move across it in canoes carved from single massive trees, some so large they can carry dozens of people at once. These vessels aren't crude. They're engineered for balance and speed, shaped by experience passed down over centuries. People travel between islands constantly, to visit relatives, to trade, to marry, to form alliances. News moves along these routes faster than the Spanish realize. By the time Columbus is still congratulating himself on a successful landing, word of the strange ships is already beginning to ripple outward. This society doesn't revolve around kings or castles. It revolves around relationships, kinship, obligation, memory. Every person belongs to a lineage that stretches backward through time and outward across water. If a hurricane destroys crops on one island, help will come from another. If a village struggles, cousins and in-laws arrive by canoe with food and labor. Survival here isn't about walls or armies. It's about connection. Food is the foundation of everything, and it's more sophisticated than any of the Europeans understand. Fields aren't flat, plowed scars in the land. They're mounded, layered, alive. Cassava grows here, a root that looks harmless but will kill you if you eat it raw. These people learned long ago how to tame it. They grate it, press it, drain the poison, dry it, bake it into bread that can last for months. A food perfectly designed for island life, for storms and uncertainty. They grow sweet potatoes, beans, peppers, peanuts, pineapples. They fish with nets and traps placed where tides and currents naturally guide the catch. They hunt, but carefully. They don't strip the land bare. They shape it gently, patiently, knowing they'll need it next season and the season after that. And then there's meaning. Everything here has it. Trees are not just trees. Rivers are not just water. The world is alive with unseen forces, spirits that inhabit stone and wood and wind. These forces are given form in carved objects, carefully made, passed down, spoken to, listened to. They are consulted before decisions, honored in ceremony, carried into the future as anchors to the past. Leadership isn't absolute. A chief holds power only as long as they prove worthy of it. Generosity matters. Wisdom matters. Spiritual authority matters. Fail your people, and they will stop following you. This is not a world built on fear. It's built on balance. Women hold power here in ways the Europeans don't recognize. They lead rituals. They heal. Sometimes they rule. Knowledge isn't locked behind gender or blood alone. It moves through families, through teachers, through lived experience. This is what the Spanish don't see as they stand on the beach trading beads for gold. They see nakedness and assume simplicity. They see stone tools and assume backwardness. They don't understand that technology adapts to environment, that metal armor is useless in a humid forest, that survival doesn't always look like conquest, and the islanders don't see what's coming either. They don't recognize the danger carried quietly in breath and blood. They don't know that the visitors' bodies are walking archives of diseases they've never encountered. They don't know that generosity will be remembered as weakness by men trained in a harsher world. For now, everything still feels possible. The strangers smile. The gifts change hands. Children watch from a distance, curious rather than afraid. The ocean is calm. The sun climbs higher. This moment still belongs to curiosity, not violence. But beyond the reef, the ships wait. And beyond the ships, a mindset waits. One shaped by scarcity, hierarchy, and the belief that land can be owned if you say the right words loudly enough. The collision hasn't happened yet. Not fully. This is still the intake of breath before impact. The first steps inland feel harmless. Columbus walks carefully, trying to appear calm, generous, confident. He gestures toward the trees, the houses, the people watching from a distance. He smiles often. He gives more beads, more small bells. The islanders respond in kind, parrots, cotton thread, tiny pieces of gold. Gold, it's not much. A small pendant, a thin plate, a nose ornament. But to Columbus, it's a signal flare. In his journal, he notes it immediately. Where do they get it? Is there more? How far? Who controls it? The questions shift. Not who are these people, but where is the gold? He writes that they are generous, that they share freely, that they have no iron weapons, that they would make good servants, that with 50 men he could subjugate them all, that it's an extraordinary pivot. Within hours of contact, curiosity turns into calculation. The islanders, for their part, are still reading this encounter through their own framework. Visitors arrive by canoe all the time. Strangers can become trading partners. Alliances can be forged. Exchange is normal. Hospitality is strength. They do not know that these visitors come from a system that measures worth and extraction. Columbus begins asking about larger islands. The word Sapangu, Japan, echoes in his mind. He believes he is close to Asia. He believes cities of gold lie just over the horizon. The islanders point vaguely southeast when he gestures toward the gold ornaments. They might mean another island. They might mean far away. They might simply be trying to satisfy the strange man's insistence. But Columbus hears confirmation. Within days, he orders several islanders taken aboard his ships, officially to learn the language. In practice, they are leverage, guides, proof of discovery, human evidence to present back in Spain. It is the first fracture. From the shore, families watch as their relatives are rowed out to floating wooden fortresses. The strangers smile. They promise return. The anchors lift. Out at sea, the mood changes. The ships are cramped, foul, unfamiliar. The taken islanders are surrounded by wood, rope, metal, animals they have never seen before. The ocean, once a road, is now a wall. They're no longer travelers. They are cargo Columbus sails on, moving from island to island across the Bahamas, then toward Cuba, then Hispaniola. At every stop, the pattern repeats. Questions about gold, notes about obedience, observations about how easily these people might be controlled, that he still insists he has reached the Indies. He calls the people Indios, a mistaken geography that will harden into identity for centuries. On Hispaniola, he encounters something different. Larger settlements, more structured leadership, fields that stretch farther inland, signs of regional authority. Here, gold is not just decorative. It exists in rivers, in small quantities, but real enough to confirm his obsession. Then the Santa Maria runs aground on Christmas Day. It's a disaster and an opportunity. With the shipwrecked timber, Columbus orders the construction of a small fort, La Navidad. He leaves behind 39 men, supplies, weapons, a claim that he sails back to Spain in early 1493, convinced he has succeeded. He carries captive islanders, gold trinkets, exotic plants, stories of fertile land and compliant people. He frames it all carefully: wealth for the crown, souls for the church, glory for Spain. When he arrives, he is celebrated. And here is where the breath finally releases. Because Columbus is not returning alone, that he goes back to the Caribbean that same year with 17 ships. Not 3, 17. Soldiers, settlers, priests, horses, seeds, steel, bureaucrats, expectations. This is no longer exploration. This is colonization. And when they arrive at La Navidad, the fort is silent, burned. The men left behind are dead. The reasons are complex: exploitation, violence, internal conflict. But to the Spanish, it confirms what they already suspected. Control must be tighter. Force must be clearer. Leniency was a mistake. The second voyage does not land like the first. Haiti arrives with intent. When Christopher Columbus returns, the islands feel different before anyone even speaks. This time there are horses, armor, dogs trained to kill, priests carrying crosses beside, soldiers carrying steel. The landing is louder, heavier. The ground itself seems to understand that this is not a visit. It's an occupation. Isabella becomes the first permanent European town in the Americas. It is badly placed, poorly planned, and brutally enforced. Food is scarce for the Spaniards, but demands are endless for the Tino. Gold becomes law that a system is introduced quietly, then enforced violently. Tribute. Every adult Tino is ordered to deliver a hawk's bell filled with gold dust every few months. Those who live where gold does not exist must deliver cotton instead. Failure is not negotiated. It is punished. Hands are cut off. Necks are chained. Examples are made. The logic is simple and merciless. Compliance spreads faster than mercy. For the Tino, this is incomprehensible. Gold was never currency. It was not power. It was decoration, ritual, symbolism. Rivers were shared. Land was communal. Authority was relational, not absolute. Now value is extracted, not shared. Now bodies are measured by output. Now obedience determines survival. Some resist that a cacique named Cayanabo organizes attacks. Spanish outposts are burned. Soldiers are ambushed in forests that no map can tame. For brief moments, the land pushes back. But resistance meets an enemy it has never faced. Coordinated violence backed by ideology. Horses turn warriors into targets. Steel turns courage into wounds. Disease, silent, unstoppable, does what weapons cannot. Smallpox moves faster than any army. Villages empty without battle. Elders die first. Children follow. Knowledge evaporates. Songs stop being sung because no one remembers the endings. Columbus responds not with restraint, but with escalation. Enslavement expands. Entire communities are relocated. Survivors are branded. Women are taken. Families are broken deliberately, because broken people are easier to rule. Reports of cruelty reach Spain. Columbus is accused. Investigated. Temporarily arrested. But the machine he helped start does not stop. Because this was never just about one MAN.IT, is about a system that now understands what these lands represent. Labor, land, wealth, expansion. Columbus becomes replaceable. The model remains .b why the early 1500s, the Tino population collapses by the hundreds of thousands. What took centuries to build unravels in decades. Where villages stood, estates rise. Where rituals lived, plantations spread. And Europe learns a lesson it will repeat again and again. If a people can be extracted, there will be dot. If a land can be claimed, it will be dot. If resistance exists, it will be erased or rewritten. The Spaniards stop asking for gold. They start asking for time. Days of labor. Weeks in mines. Seasons in fields. The tribute system mutates into something more efficient, more permanent. Encomienda. Entire villages are assigned to Spanish overseers like property, not land, people. This is where the story slips into the cracks of history. A Tino boy named Arawi, not recorded, not remembered by name, is taken with his father to a river mine. His job is simple. Stand knee-deep in cold water and sift mud through a woven tray. Day after day, the water numbs his legs. The sun splits his skin. When his tray comes up empty, the overseer doesn't shout. He just watches. The dogs do the rest. Arawi learns quickly what silence means, what stillness means, what survival costs. At 18 he listens to older men whisper stories, not of rebellion, but of before, when the rivers were generous, when gold stayed in the earth, when strangers came by canoe, not ship. These stories feel dangerous now. Memory itself has become a form of resistance. Meanwhile, Spain is pleased. Ships return heavier than before. Not with gold alone, but with sugar, hides, timber, enslaved bodies. The crown formalizes conquest. Lawyers write rules to justify brutality. Priests debate whether the natives have souls, while baptizing them just in time to work them harder. Christopher Columbus is no longer central. He fades into administration, accusation, decline. But the architecture he helped build stands tall, and it spreads. Word reaches the mainland. There are empires inland. Cities, rulers, tribute systems already in place, waiting to be hijacked. The Caribbean becomes a testing ground, a brutal rehearsal. Back on the islands, collapse accelerates. Women stop bearing children, from exhaustion, from grief, from fear of what those children would inherit. Elders die without passing knowledge. Gods lose their names. Rivers are renamed. The land itself begins answering to foreign words. Arawi survives longer than most. He is eventually sent to work a sugar mill, an invention that turns land, labor, and time into profit with terrifying efficiency. The mill never sleeps. Neither do the overseers. When Arawi finally collapses, no one marks the moment. Another body steps into his place. History records numbers instead. WY 1515. Entire islands are described as emptied. Not conquered, not defeated. Emptied. As if people were contents poured out rather than lives extinguished. And in that emptiness, a new solution is proposed. If the native labor force is gone, replace it. Ships begin arriving not from Spain, but from Africa. The system adapts. The islands grow quiet in a way no one celebrates. Spanish records begin using a new tone. Not triumph, not shock, but inconvenience. Reports describe labor shortages. Fields left untended. Mines without hands to dig them. The problem is no longer resistance. It's absence. The solution arrives already imagined. Spain has been trading in enslaved Africans for decades through Portuguese routes. What changes now is scale. The Caribbean becomes a laboratory where human suffering is converted into logistics. Ships are rerouted, contracts signed, permissions granted. Human beings become inventory. The first Africans arrive disoriented, chained, stripped of language and context. They're told nothing of why they are here, only that escape is impossible. The islands feel cursed to them. Heat presses down like a hand. Sugar fields stretch endlessly. The air smells of rot and sweetness mixed together. A man called Kofi, his real name lost somewhere between the coast of West Africa and the dock at Santo Domingo, keeps count of days by scars. One for each punishment. One for each body thrown overboard during the crossing. One for the sound of waves hitting wood at night. When sleep never comes, he hears whispers among the overseers. The natives couldn't survive the work. This is said without irony, without pause, as if survival were a moral failing. The system hardens. Sugar plantations replace villages. Mills roar day and night, grinding cane and bone alike. Enslaved Africans are forced into rhythms designed to extract everything: strength, time, future. Death is expected. Replacement is planned. Some Spaniards noticed a Dominican friar, Bartolomé de las Casas, watches the islands empty and fill again with different faces but the same suffering. He writes furiously. He condemns brutality. He pleads with the crown. At one point, tragically, he even suggests African labor as a lesser evil, a position he later denounces when he realizes the horror simply moved locations. His words reach Spain. His warnings do not stop the machine, because now the Atlantic itself has been reorganized. Europe supplies weapons and demand. Africa supplies stolen lives. The Americas supply land and profit. The triangle locks into place, on the islands. Cultures collide under violence. African traditions merge with fragments of Tino knowledge that somehow survived. Plants, rhythms, healing practices. New identities form in secret, in music, in food, in belief. Resistance does not vanish. It changes shape. Maroons escape into mountains. Rebellions spark and are crushed. Songs carry instructions hidden in metaphor. Memory learns how to hide. Kofi survives long enough to see a child born on the plantation. Born enslaved, named by someone else, claimed before taking a first breath. That is when he understands the true design of the system. Not just labor, but inheritance. Suffering that reproduces itself. Be why the mid-1500s, the Caribbean is no longer an endpoint. It is a template. What worked here, terror, bureaucracy, extraction, will be exported to the mainland. To empires larger than the Tino ever imagined. To civilizations with armies, cities, gods of their own. The age of conquest is no longer accidental. It is organized. In 1519, a new expedition leaves Cuba under a man who is ambitious, restless, and impossible to fully control. Hernán Cortés, he does not sail toward empty shores, he sails toward rumors. Rumors of cities larger than anything in Spain. Of markets overflowing with cacao, gold, jade, obsidian. Of an emperor carried on a litter, never touching the ground. Of a capital rising from water like a vision. When Cortés and his men march inland, they expect villages. Instead, they see causeways stretching across a vast lake. White temples piercing the sky. Canoes crowding canals like floating streets. They're looking at Tenochtitlan, capital of the Mexica Empire. What we now call the Aztecs' Point, one of Cortés' soldiers will later write that it was like seeing something from a dream. But dreams can turn quickly. The emperor, Moctezuma II, does not greet them with immediate war. He sends gifts first: gold discs, feathered headdresses, intricate crafts. The gesture is diplomatic, strategic, cautious. Cortés sees only confirmation, gold again. But this time, conquest will not be simple. The Mexican Empire is not fragile. It commands tribute from dozens of city-states. It fields thousands of warriors. It understands warfare as ritual, strategy, spectacle. What Cortés understands, what he learned in the Caribbean, is how to fracture alliances. The Mexica rule is not universally loved. Some subject cities resent tribute demands and sacrificial rituals. Cortés listens carefully. He promises freedom. He promises advantage. He promises revenge. Thousands of indigenous allies join him, not because they believe in Spain, but because they believe in opportunity. History often simplifies this moment into a handful of Spaniards defeating an empire. The truth is more complicated and more tragic. That it becomes a civil war amplified by foreign steel, that a fictional but plausible voice. A Tlaxcalan warrior named Isli watches Spaniards pray before battle. He does not understand their god, but he understands their weapons. He joins them not out of loyalty, but calculation. The Mexica have taxed his people for years. This is a chance to break that grip. He does not foresee what comes after. Cortés enters Tenochtitlan peacefully at first. He is housed, fed, observed. Then he makes the move that changes everything. He takes Moctezuma hostage inside his own palace. The city holds its breath. Tension snaps months later when Spanish troops massacre unarmed nobles during a religious festival. Blood floods temple steps. The illusion of diplomacy shatters. The city erupts. The Spaniards attempt to flee during what will be called La Noche Triste, the Night of Sorrows. Hundreds drown in the lake, weighed down by stolen gold. Allies scatter. The empire fights back with fury. For a moment, it seems conquest has failed. Then smallpox arrives. Carried unknowingly by Europeans, it spreads through Tenochtitlan with terrifying speed. Warriors, priests, children. No immunity, no cure. Leadership collapses as rulers die in waves. When Cortés returns months later with reinforced allies, the city is weakened not just militarily, but biologically. The siege lasts over 70 days. Canals clog with debris and bodies. Fresh water is cut off. Hunger replaces pride. Disease finishes what artillery begins. In 1521, Tenochtitlan falls. Stones of temples are torn down to build a new colonial capital. Mexico City. Isli survives long enough to see Spanish rule replace Mexican rule. Tribute continues. Only the language changes. The pattern from the Caribbean repeats, but on a grander scale. Exploit division. Capture leadership. Let disease run. Institutionalize control. And news travels fast. If the Mexican Empire can fall, what else is possible? To the south, beyond jungles and mountains, another empire waits. South of the jungles, the land rises sharply, as if trying to keep outsiders out. When Francisco Pizarro reaches the Andes in the early 1530s, he does not find scattered kingdoms or divided states. He finds the Inca Empire, the largest empire in the Americas, stitched together by stone roads, messengers who run faster than horses, and an administrative system that reaches from modern Colombia to Chile. This is not an empire built on gold worship. Gold here is symbolic. Power is measured in labor, land, and loyalty, and the timing is catastrophic. The Inca Empire is already wounded. A brutal civil war has just ended between two brothers, Atahualpa and Huáscar, over the throne. Cities are exhausted. Armies are depleted. Trust is thin. Pizarro arrives with fewer than 200 men, not thousands. Not an army, a calculated gamble. Atahualpa, fresh from victory, agrees to meet the strangers in the town of Cajamarca. He expects diplomacy. He expects ritual. He expects superiority, because what threat could such a small force pose? The square is quiet. Atahualpa arrives unarmed, carried on a litter, surrounded by attendants. A friar steps forward, speaking words translated poorly, demanding submission to a distant king and an unfamiliar god. Atahualpa listens. Then he rejects it. That moment is all Pizarro needs. Cannons fire. Horses charge. Steel flashes. The ambush lasts minutes. Thousands of unarmed attendants are slaughtered. And Atahualpa, emperor of millions, is dragged from his litter and taken prisoner. The empire freezes. Never before has the Sapa Inca been captured. Authority radiates from his body, his lineage, his breath. With him imprisoned, the system has no precedent for response. Atahualpa offers a ransom that will echo through history. One room filled with gold, twice over with silver. And the Incas deliver. Statues melted, temples stripped, sacred objects destroyed, not in battle, but in compliance. Caravans pour into Cajamarca, carrying wealth accumulated over generations that a fictional but believable witness. A young Inca record keeper named Tupa marks the deliveries with knotted cords, quipus tightening in his hands. Each knot represents devotion turned into desperation. He believes the ransom will work, because Inca promises always have. The Spaniards take the metal. Then they execute Atahualpa anyway, strangled, baptized at the last moment, removed. The message is clear. Agreements mean nothing when power is absolute. From there, collapse accelerates. Without unified leadership, factions compete. Pizarro marches on Cusco. Temples are looted. Palaces become barracks. The Inca road system, once a tool of unity, becomes a conquest highway. But the greatest transformation comes later, quietly silver in the mountain of Potosí, Spaniards uncover veins so rich they seem impossible. Entire mountains are hollowed out. Indigenous labor is conscripted through the META system, a draft that sends men into lethal conditions year after year. Millions die. That silver floods Europe, funds wars, stabilizes currencies, fuels global trade with Asia. The modern world economy begins turning, powered by Andean lungs and broken bodies. Tupa survives long enough to see coins minted from sacred metal, stamped with foreign kings' faces. He understands then that conquest was never about territory alone, that IT was about scale. Not ruling one empire, but feeding an entire planet. And Spain learns its final lesson. With enough extraction, the world itself can be reorganized. The Andes, once humming with quipu knots and messenger runners, now echo with the clatter of pickaxes and hammers. Every silver vein in Potosi becomes a lifeline for empires far beyond the mountains. Europeans count coin, never bodies. Tupa, the Inca record keeper, survives the initial shock but cannot stop the endless labor drafts. Men are marched into the mines, their lives measured in shifts and sacks of ore. Each inhalation of dust becomes another invisible toll in a global ledger. The air smells of metal, sweat, and fear. Fictional interlude. A young miner, Ilari, dreams of the mountains as they once were, forests, terraces, flowing rivers. In his mind, he can hear the drums of the Sapa Inca's palace, the rituals of life before conquest. But reality drags him deeper underground. Every coin he chips out will end up in Spain, funding wars he cannot understand, in lands he will never see. Meanwhile, Europe grows wealthy. Ports like Seville and Antwerp overflow with silver. Merchant ships sail to Manila, exchanging Andean wealth for Asian spices and silk. Entire economies now depend on metal extracted at the cost of millions of indigenous lives. Spain celebrates its kings, minting coins stamped with crowns and crosses, oblivious to the human stories etched into each ounce. Disease follows. Smallpox, measles, and influenza sweep across the continent, wiping out populations weakened by forced labor and famine. Tupa watches helplessly as villages vanish, the names of ancestors forgotten. The Inca road system, once a testament to organization and communication, becomes a trail of loss. Yet, even amid collapse, culture survives in fragments. Whispered prayers, secret gatherings, and hidden altars. In some corners, children learn stories in Quechua, the language of resilience, passing memory like a hidden treasure. This is the paradox. The Andes, conquered and exploited, become the engine of a global world, but its people are almost entirely erased from the ledger of history. The stage is set for the next chapter. How silver, slavery, and empire will link continents in a system that reshapes oceans, trade, and power forever. A story that threads from the Andes to Europe to Asia. The moment. Silver first glinted in the sun at Potosi. The Andes became the beating heart of a world in transformation. Every vein carved, every ounce smelted, carried the weight not just of gold and silver, but of lives, culture, and centuries of history. Merchants in Seville counted coins in the thousands while back in the highlands. Tupa and his people counted bodies, unmarked and nameless, each one a casualty of conquest masquerading as progress. Ships carrying silver set sail for Europe, weaving a network of wealth that touched Asia. The silver would reach Manila, traded for Chinese silk, Japanese porcelain, and spices from the East Indies. But in each port, the stories of the men and women who extracted that wealth were invisible, lost to the wind and waves. The commodities themselves were indifferent, but humanity bore the cost. Imagine a young boy in the mines, Ilari, forced to crawl through narrow tunnels, pickaxe in hand, dust choking his lungs, and the distant mountains of his childhood, now nothing but a memory. At night, he dreams of the terraces and flowing rivers, of the songs of his ancestors. But morning drags him back into darkness. He works alongside elders, some too weak to lift the oar, others too obedient to resist, as overseers with whips keep time like the metronome of suffering. The mines are deathly cold and blisteringly hot by turns. Every ounce of silver carries a story of sweat, fear, and exhaustion. When someone collapses, the others carry on. There is no time for grief. The empire demands productivity, and human bodies are disposable. Smallpox and other diseases spread like invisible flames, carried unknowingly by Spanish overseers and African slaves brought in as supplementary labor. Entire communities vanish, leaving behind empty homes and abandoned terraces, as if the mountains themselves were swallowing their history. Back in Europe, nobles and monarchs are oblivious. Coins minted from Potosi silver line the treasury, fund armies, build cathedrals, and pay for the luxuries of court life. The crown grows fat and the merchants richer, yet every ship that leaves the Andes carries untold suffering. In the marketplaces of Seville and Antwerp, the glint of silver masks the stories of young boys like Ilari and the elders who died unseen. No one counts the invisible ledger of pain that underwrites European prosperity. The ripple spreads further. Manila becomes a hub where Andean silver buys Chinese silk. Merchants in Canton accept silver for spices, porcelain, and silk, unknowingly building a global system dependent on the suffering of peoples thousands of miles away. Europe becomes richer. Asia receives the precious metals it coveted, and the Americas become both source and sacrifice. It's a planetary system of extraction and exchange, driven by desire, greed, and the unintended consequences of empire. But the human cost is layered, personal, intimate, and devastating. Tupou watches as his culture, his people, and his knowledge slip through his fingers. Oral traditions, ancestral practices, spiritual knowledge. Everything is under siege, erased by disease, forced labor, and colonial ambition. Even when small enclaves survive, their memory is fragile, transmitted quietly from parent to child, like a secret code against oblivion that in Europe. The story is entirely different. Citizens marvel at coins, spices, and the exotic imports arriving in their ports. Stories of conquered lands are told with pride, omitting the brutal reality. Meanwhile, in the Andes, the mountains echo with labor, sorrow, and the unrecorded tales of those who gave everything to make a global empire possible. The next chapter of this story begins when these threads converge in the Pacific, when silver meets the maritime trade networks of China and Japan, when Europe's wealth meets the logistics and diplomacy of Asia, and when the invisible human cost continues to ripple through generations. Why the mid-16th century? The world had become a stage for the silver of Potosi. Ships laden with coins sailed from Potosi to Seville, then onward to Antwerp and Lisbon, before crossing the Atlantic to the ports of Asia. Each coin carried a double story, one of wealth and power, and one of suffering and loss. European kings used this silver to fund armies, wage wars, and expand colonies, often oblivious to the human cost at the source. The mines have become an unrelenting machine, grinding down both the land and its people. Meanwhile, the Pacific trade routes transformed Manila into a bustling hub. Here, Potosi silver met Chinese silk, Japanese porcelain, and spices from the East Indies. Merchants and smugglers played a delicate game, balancing profits with political tension. Smugglers risked life and cargo, and sailors faced storms, disease, and piracy. Among them, stories circulated of phantom ships vanishing without a trace, or treasures being thrown overboard to avoid capture. Tales that blurred into legend, but were rooted in the very real danger of transporting wealth born from pain. Back in the Andes, the human toll intensified. Ilari, now a young man, had witnessed generations of his people fall in the mines. The tunnels carved deeper into the mountains became death traps. He remembered the old men who taught him songs of the ancestors, now silent, and children who vanished in the night, claimed by exhaustion or disease. Despite it all, small acts of resistance persisted. A miner hiding a token from a loved one, a mother teaching her child a forbidden song, elders passing on sacred knowledge under the watchful eyes of the colonizers. These fragile acts became the invisible threads of cultural survival. Europe, intoxicated by silver, began to wage wars it could now afford to finance. The coins of Potosi funded battles that reshaped kingdoms and empires. Armies marched with confidence, their pay backed by a wealth extracted thousands of miles away. Meanwhile, merchants and financiers tracked silver like blood through a body, watching it pulse through markets, interest rates, and commodities, creating a global economy dependent on both human labor and natural resources. Yet for all the wealth, shadows of the Andes haunted the system. Diseases traveled with Europeans to new continents, decimating populations and destabilizing societies far from the mines. Entire communities disappeared, leaving the land to reclaim terraces, abandoned homes, and silent temples. The mountains themselves seemed to mourn, their rivers swollen with tears of those lost. At the same time, a hidden network of knowledge began to spread among the oppressed. Miners shared survival techniques, rituals, and warnings about the dangers of overwork. Some even smuggled silver, small portions hidden in clothing or tools, as a subtle form of rebellion against the system. These acts were risky, but they carried the seed of future resistance, a quiet defiance against the empire's relentless machinery. In Asia, the influx of silver reshaped societies. In China, the demand for Potosi silver caused inflation, but also stimulated trade and urban growth. Cities like Guangzhou thrived on the import-export system, their markets full of silk, porcelain, and spices. But these distant cities were connected invisibly to the Andes. Every coin had a story that no one there knew, of children crawling through tunnels, elders collapsing under the weight of labor, and mothers who wept in secret for their lost families. By the end of the century, Potosi had become more than a mine. It was a global engine, its influence felt in politics, trade, and culture across continents. Its silver reshaped the world, linking Europe, Asia, and the Americas in ways that would leave legacies lasting centuries. And yet, beneath the glittering surface of global wealth, the human cost remained invisible, a silent current running through history. By the dawn of the 17th century, the Potosi silver veins had reached depths few dared to imagine. The mountains seemed alive, groaning under the weight of extraction. Ilari, now a seasoned miner, had learned to navigate the tunnels with uncanny precision. He knew every creaking beam, every hidden shaft, every shadow where colonial overseers feared to tread. He had also become part of a secret network of resistance. Miners who had small amounts of silver, passed messages in code, and whispered forbidden stories to preserve the memory of their people. These were tiny, invisible rebellions. Yet they sustained hope in a world dominated by exploitation. Thousands of miles away, in Manila, the arrival of Potosi silver was causing a ripple of both opportunity and danger. Merchant families who had once dealt only in local goods now found themselves navigating a web of Spanish galleons, Japanese traders, and Chinese merchants. Among them, a young Spanish trader named Diego had risen to prominence, not just by fortune, but by clever manipulation of shipping routes and secret alliances with pirates. Diego's ships carried silver, but sometimes he diverted small portions to fund covert projects, bribe officials, or gain leverage over rival merchants. Rumors of phantom shipments and lost treasure haunted the harbor, sometimes true, sometimes exaggerated, but each whispered tale fed the mystique of the silver trade. In Europe, Potosi's influence had seeped into every facet of life. Kings and nobles flaunted wealth, commissioning grand palaces, exotic gardens, and armies equipped with the latest weapons. Yet the glittering coins also carried hidden stories. A young accountant in Antwerp, Matthias, had begun to track silver shipments meticulously, noting discrepancies that hinted at theft, smuggling, or misappropriation. His obsession with numbers led him down dark alleys of intrigue, blackmail, secret contracts, and coded correspondence that could topple fortunes. Matthias became both a historian and a detective, chronicling the flow of silver while uncovering the human shadows behind the wealth. Back in the Andes, a tragic love story unfolded in the mines. Ilari's sister, Naira, had been sold into a labor detail far deeper than even the experienced miners dared to go. She survived by her wits, memorizing the routes, hiding tools, and forming alliances with other women forced into grueling work. Her courage became legendary in whispers among the miners, a story of resilience, cunning, and the will to endure against a system designed to crush her spirit. Ilari risked everything to deliver messages and tiny gifts of silver to her, each one a symbol of hope and resistance. Their bond, forged in the shadows of exploitation, was a quiet rebellion against the empire itself. Meanwhile, the silver trade ignited conflicts beyond human greed. Pirates and privateers attacked galleons, seizing silver and treasures, leaving no survivors. Storms sank entire fleets, their riches claimed by the ocean, creating both panic and opportunity in distant markets. In some ports, vigilante groups of merchants and sailors formed to protect shipments, leading to clandestine networks of espionage, betrayal, and secret alliances. Every coin had a hidden story, every shipment a potential legend or disaster. Across the Atlantic, the human cost continued to mount. Entire communities in the highlands were decimated by disease, malnutrition, and exhaustion. Yet the people adapted, forging secret routes to exchange goods, knowledge, and coded messages. Shamans taught rituals that protected miner spirits. Mothers sang forbidden songs at night, and children learned to navigate tunnels in ways that mimicked animals, leaving overseers baffled. The Andes became not just a site of extraction, but a living, breathing symbol of survival against unimaginable odds. The flow of silver also transformed distant civilizations in unexpected ways. In Japan, silver was used to fund castle fortifications, samurai stipends, and trade missions. Chinese merchants hoarded silver to manipulate local economies, sometimes triggering inflation or sparking social unrest. Each continent, each society, was connected invisibly by the silver of Potosi, and yet almost no one knew the blood and tears embedded in every coin. The story of Potosi was no longer just about mines or wealth. It was about the intricate web of human ambition, resilience, and rebellion. The mountains held secrets, oceans carried whispers, and every piece of silver became a testament to both human ingenuity and human suffering. That be why the mid-17th century, the veins of Potosi had deepened, and so had the stakes. Ilari had become a legend among miners, not just for his skill, but for the coded network of messages he carried between the oppressed. Each piece of silver he smuggled was a tiny victory, a defiance against the empire that sought to erase his people. But now, danger lurked closer than ever. A ruthless overseer, Don Alvaro, had begun suspecting irregularities. He sent spies through the labyrinthine tunnels, offering gold for betrayal, threatening families, and using intimidation to break the network. The miners learned quickly. Trust was fragile, and one misstep could mean death. Meanwhile, in Manila, Diego's schemes had grown bolder. One moonless night, he boarded a rival galleon in the harbor, not with swords but with cunning. Forged letters, bribes, and the promise of fortune convinced the crew to surrender without a fight. The silver he claimed would be diverted to secret warehouses, funding covert missions to aid indigenous communities in South America. But even Diego couldn't escape betrayal. A trusted lieutenant, seduced by greed, began leaking information to pirates, setting in motion a chain of events that could unravel years of careful planning. Thousands of miles away in Europe, Matthias's obsession with tracking silver led him into the dangerous underworld of Antwerp. He uncovered coded ledgers that implicated noble families in smuggling rings, revealing that the silver fueling their lavish lifestyles came directly from the suffering in the mines. Driven by a sense of justice or madness, Matthias began forging alliances with sympathetic merchants, planning a scandal that could topple fortunes, shatter reputations, and expose the human cost hidden behind every coin. But power is a dangerous game, and he quickly realized that enemies could strike where he least expected it, in the shadowed alleyways or opulent ballrooms. Back in the Andes, Neira's survival skills had grown legendary. She led a covert group of women miners through secret shafts, gathering intelligence on the overseers, mapping tunnels, and sometimes stealing silver to aid their families. One fateful night, she discovered a hidden cavern glimmering with untouched silver. But it was a trap. Don Alvaro had set a snare, hoping to capture her and crush the resistance. Neira's courage, quick thinking, and knowledge of the mountains allowed her to escape, but she left behind a symbol, a carved silver token that became a rallying emblem for the oppressed miners. Pirates and privateers continued to weave chaos across oceans. One notorious corsair, known only as the Crimson Shadow, struck at galleons laden with silver, leaving few survivors. Rumors spread that he was once a traitor like Diego, turned rogue after witnessing the atrocities in the mines. His attacks forced colonial powers to strengthen naval convoys, but the Shadow's exploits also inspired countless tales of rebellion, smuggling, and secret treasure caches, some real, some legend, all feeding the mythos of silver and defiance. In distant Japan, silver funded samurai expeditions and castle fortifications, but also sparked intrigue in the courts. Daimyos competed fiercely, hoarding silver to outmaneuver rivals. Espionage networks stretched across oceans, exchanging coded messages with European merchants. Some scholars speculate that a few daring Japanese diplomats even plotted secret missions to South America, seeking alliances with native leaders to secure silver before European powers could seize it all. The story of Potosi was no longer just about mines, wealth, or empires. It was about the resilience of people, the intricate webs of betrayal, and the courage to resist in the shadows. Every coin carried a tale of secret lovers, stolen fortunes, coded messages, and daring escapes. And while empires rose and fell on silver, the hidden stories of those who endured and defied left an invisible mark across continents. The cold walls of Potosi's deepest shafts echoed with the hurried whispers of miners, their lanterns casting trembling shadows across veins of silver. Neira led her band of women miners through a series of secret passages, carrying silver hidden in small sacks, each step weighed with tension. The silver was not just wealth. It was a lifeline for families and a symbol of defiance against the oppressive overseers. Unknown to Neira, Don Alvaro had tightened his grip, sending men and informants to track every suspicious movement. But the overseer spies were unaware that Diego, now sailing closer with a small fleet, had intercepted one of their secret letters. With nimble cunning, he crafted a counter-strategy, a false convoy laden with fake silver, intended to lure the overseer's men into a trap. It was a dangerous gamble, for one misstep would cost lives. Meanwhile, Matthias, hidden in Antwerp, worked tirelessly on coded instructions that would allow loyal merchants to move real silver undetected. His obsession had grown perilous. The line between justice and obsession blurred as he sent secret orders to trusted allies across oceans, knowing that one betrayal could doom them all. A message arrived from a nameless contact in Potosi, a warning that the mines would soon be under siege. Matthias's pulse quickened. Every calculation, every ledger, every note of silver mattered now more than ever. In the labyrinthine mines, Neira's group discovered a cavern previously untouched, glittering with a silver vein wider than any they had seen. But this bounty was a lure. Don Alvaro's men descended from the shadows, setting a deadly trap. With nerves of steel, Neira and her companions fought their way through the narrow tunnels, their small axes and hidden daggers flashing in the dim light. They created diversions, sealed passages behind them, and left false tracks that would confuse the pursuers. Meanwhile, Diego orchestrated a daring raid from the coast. Under the cover of darkness, he navigated his small fleet through treacherous waters, ready to intercept the galleons carrying the Empire's silver. He coordinated with Neira via coded signals. A single flare from the mountain's summit meant the path was clear, and when the flares finally lit the night sky, Diego's men struck with precision, seizing the silver before it could ever reach the coffers of colonial powers. But betrayal lurked closer than any sword. One of Diego's lieutenants, tempted by promises of gold, had begun leaking plans to rival pirates. The Crimson Shadow, notorious for striking when least expected, was already moving toward the captured convoy. In the tense hours that followed, alliances shifted like sand in the wind. Loyalties tested, and even the bravest hearts faced impossible choices as dawn broke. The first rays of sunlight glinted off silver, both real and fake, scattered across mountains, ships, and secret caches. The battle had ended, but the struggle was far from over. The veins of Potosi had not only given wealth, they had given power, hope, and the possibility of freedom. Each participant now carried the weight of choices, secrets, and promises, some honorable, some dangerous, knowing that the next collision, the next daring move, would determine the fate of empires and the survival of the defiant. The silver had moved, but its path was perilous. Nera's group, bruised but unbroken, now traveled under the cover of dense forests and jagged mountain passes, carrying the Empire's fortune hidden in plain sight. Each night, campfires flickered like whispers against the dark, shadows dancing on tired faces as plans were whispered in secret. The air smelled of damp earth and danger, the kind of danger that sharpened every sense. Diego, from his secret coastal cove, sent word of a rendezvous point near the cliffs where the river met the ocean. He had prepared small, nimble boats capable of evading the colonial patrols, but the waters were treacherous and the currents unpredictable. He knew every choice would echo in lives lost or saved. As his men prepared, they discovered signs of betrayal. A trusted navigator had vanished, leaving a map with false coordinates. Diego's temper simmered, but he masked it behind calm eyes, plotting a countertrap to turn the betrayer into a pawn. Meanwhile, in Antwerp, Matthias faced pressure from rival merchants, their threats growing bolder with each passing day. He had no choice but to orchestrate an elaborate scheme to reroute the silver through hidden trade routes. Each coded letter, each forged ledger, was a thread in a web he hoped would hold together long enough to save the rebels and secure their freedom. But news arrived that Don Alvaro had learned of these secret channels, sending enforcers to intercept the shipments. The tension thickened. The game had turned deadly. In the high mountains of Potosi, Nera's group encountered an abandoned village, its walls scarred by previous raids. Here, they found allies, a band of miners who had refused to bow to Alvaro's tyranny, hiding in secret tunnels beneath their homes. Together, they devised a plan. While Nera led the convoy through one hidden pass, the miners would create diversions in other tunnels, drawing the enemy away. It was risky, almost impossible, but there was no other path. Every step forward was a gamble. Every shadow could conceal death. Night fell. The chase began. Alvaro's men, relentless and cruel, pursued the convoy through the twisting mountain paths. Fires flared across ridges as signals, and echoes of shouted commands bounced off the cliffs. Nera's team moved with stealth, sliding through narrow crevices, leaping over chasms, and leaving false tracks that misled their pursuers. When they reached the river, Diego's fleet appeared like ghosts in the mist, rowboats cutting silently through the dark waters. The reunion was tense, charged with unspoken warnings. One wrong move could shatter everything. Yet, the most dangerous threat was not Alvaro's soldiers, but the human heart itself. Among Nera's group, one harbored secrets too heavy to share, and every decision now risked exposure. Loyalties wavered, and trust became a fragile commodity, tested with each passing hour. By the time the first light touched the peaks, the silver had changed hands multiple times, hidden and rediscovered, and the forces chasing it were exhausted but unyielding. The stage was set for an even greater confrontation, one that would stretch across mountains, rivers, and hidden ports, uniting every player in a final, breathtaking struggle for survival, wealth, and freedom. Dawn broke over the jagged peaks, painting the mountains in fire and shadow. Nera's group, exhausted from nights of stealth and narrow escapes, now faced the ultimate test, crossing the treacherous cliffs to reach Diego's hidden port while evading Alvaro's relentless enforcers. Each step demanded precision. One miscalculated move meant a plunge into the chasm below. The air was thin, cold, and sharp, yet charged with anticipation. Every heartbeat a drum signaling that the final act was upon them. At the same time, in the river valley below, Diego's men prepared the small fleet. The boats were laden not only with silver, but with supplies for a long, clandestine voyage. Diego's eyes scanned the horizon for enemy ships, aware that a single mistake would turn the river into a trap. He dispatched scouts upstream to create false trails, hoping to buy precious time. The currents roared, carrying whispers of danger that seemed to echo off the surrounding cliffs. Meanwhile, Alvaro's forces closed in from both sides. His elite guards, ruthless and methodical, moved in formations that left little room for error. He had brought new intelligence, captured letters, forged documents, and even rumors of traitors within Nera's own ranks. Every soldier knew the stakes. Failure meant disgrace, but success promised the rewards of unimaginable wealth. Yet Alvaro underestimated the desperation and cunning of those he hunted. In the abandoned village of Potosi, Nera convened a council with the miners who had pledged their loyalty. They crafted an intricate plan. While a decoy convoy moved along a visible path, the true carriers of silver would slip through hidden tunnels, emerge near the cliffs, and descend to the river silently. Each participant knew the risks, yet the unity forged in shared peril gave them strength. Stories of past losses, whispered legends of hidden passages, and even fabricated rumors to confuse the enemy fueled their resolve. As the sun climbed higher, the chase erupted into chaos. Smoke from diversionary fires obscured the mountainside. Echoes of shouting and the clatter of hooves filled the air. Nera led her group down a narrow, winding trail that seemed impassable, her agility and knowledge of the terrain allowing them to slip past enemy patrols. In a moment of near disaster, one of the group stumbled, but a miner's hand caught them just in time, reminding everyone that even in the harshest moments, trust could be life-saving. On the river, Diego's fleet navigated treacherous currents while enemy scouts tried to intercept them. Boats collided, splintered, and disappeared into the mist. Yet through skill, luck, and coordination, the silver made it onto the vessels. Diego himself took the helm of the lead boat, guiding it with a mix of calculated risk and instinct honed by years of surviving impossible escapes. The water shimmered with the reflection of the rising sun, a fleeting beauty amid chaos. Then came the moment of ultimate betrayal. One of Nera's trusted companions revealed a secret allegiance, attempting to divert the silver to Alvaro. The revelation sparked chaos within the group, forcing immediate decisions that would determine their survival. Nera, quick and decisive, neutralized the threat and restored order, but the tension left scars deeper than any physical wound. Night fell. The convoy reached the hidden port. The silver was loaded, the boats prepared for departure, and the survivors gathered for a fleeting moment of relief. Yet the mountains behind them still held danger, and the rivers ahead were fraught with uncertainty. The path to freedom was only partially clear, and the knowledge that Alvaro would not give up haunted every decision. The stage was set for the next chapter, a daring voyage along uncharted waters, pursued by relentless enemies, where cunning, courage, and the bonds of loyalty would face the ultimate trial. The night air was thick with salt and tension as Diego's fleet slipped quietly into the winding river. The silver crates hidden beneath tarps and nets. Lanterns bobbed gently, casting golden reflections on the restless water. Each oar stroke carried them further from the mountains. But the river was no sanctuary. Currents twisted unpredictably, and the faint creak of enemy patrols in the distance reminded them that danger trailed their every move. Storm clouds gathered on the horizon, black and heavy like the shadow of Alvaro's wrath. Diego consulted his maps, trying to anticipate the river's moods and find the safest passage to open water. His crew, skilled but weary from constant vigilance, worked in tense silence. The occasional shout or splash made every heartbeat jump, an echo of fear that refused to subside. Nera, standing at the bow of the lead boat, scanned the mist-shrouded banks, alert for ambushes, natural hazards, or signs of betrayal. As dawn broke, the first strike of the storm hit. Lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the fleet for a moment before plunging it back into darkness. Rain pelted down in sheets, drenching men and supplies alike. Waves crashed over the riverbanks, threatening to overturn the smaller boats. Yet, despite the chaos, discipline held the group together. Diego's orders were sharp, precise, and unwavering. Every minor error could mean the loss of the silver, or their lives. In the midst of the tempest, Alvaro's agents emerged. Small, nimble boats moved silently with the current, striking unpredictably. Explosions of fire and splintered wood punctuated the chaos as the two forces collided on the surging waters. The clash was fierce. Swords flashed, cries rang out, and men fell into the churning river. Nera fought with calculated ferocity, her movements both elegant and lethal, guiding her companions past danger with uncanny instinct. Meanwhile, Diego maneuvered the lead boat through the storm, the current threatening to throw them onto hidden rocks. He shouted orders over the roar of the wind, relying on intuition and the subtle cues of water and sky. The silver, precariously balanced below deck, shifted dangerously with every wave. One wrong tilt, one misstep, and all would be lost. Amid the chaos, whispers of betrayal surfaced again. One of the scouts, secretly aligned with Alvaro, attempted to sabotage a boat by cutting ropes under cover of rain. Nera caught the act mid-motion, confronting the traitor in a tense standoff. The confrontation ended with swift justice, but the lingering unease reminded everyone that the enemy was not only outside, but sometimes among them. That be why the third day. The storm had grown into a near monster, waves taller than men, and wind shrieking like a living thing. Yet, through unrelenting courage, careful navigation, and sheer stubbornness, the fleet pressed on. Diego's fleet emerged from the river into the open waters, battered but intact. The mountains and cliffs faded behind them, replaced by an endless horizon, a vast unknown where freedom and peril coexisted. As night fell again, the survivors huddled under tattered sails, exhausted and soaked, yet alive. The silver was still theirs, though the battle was far from over. Somewhere on the horizon, Alvaro would regroup, sending fresh agents, perhaps even pirates, to seize the treasure. For now, though, they had crossed the first major threshold. The mountains were behind them, and the open waters offered both hope and danger in equal measure. The first light of dawn revealed an endless expanse of gray waves stretching toward the horizon. Diego's fleet, though weary from the river's wrath, pressed on into the open sea. The ocean was a living entity, vast, unpredictable, and merciless. The wind, now constant, whipped sails into tense lines and tossed the smaller boats like toys. Each man and woman aboard felt the delicate balance between mastery over the sea and utter helplessness against it. Be why the second day. Murmurs of unease rippled through the fleet. Strange shapes appeared in the mist, rocks, currents, and what seemed like distant fires on the horizon. Nera stood at the bow, scanning the waves with her keen eyes. Islands, she murmured, but not on any map I've seen. The crew exchanged worried glances. This stretch of ocean was rarely traveled, and rumors of tribes, sea monsters, and hidden coves haunted even the bravest. Night brought a storm of a different sort. Unlike the river tempest, this one came with eerie sounds. Waves groaning like the cries of ancient spirits, flashes of phosphorescent light dancing on the crests, and a wind that carried voices, or perhaps illusions, telling secrets of the sea. Some of the men swore they saw humanoid figures on the waves, vanishing when approached. Diego, though skeptical, knew the mind could falter under constant strain, and fear itself could become a weapon. Amid the chaos, the fleet approached an uncharted island, shrouded in mist and cliffs. Diego decided to anchor nearby, seeking fresh water and food. As they disembarked, they discovered ruins, stone structures carved into the cliffs, overgrown with vines, whispering of a civilization long vanished. Nera ran her fingers along the carvings, recognizing symbols that hinted at ancient maritime knowledge, secret passages, and perhaps even legends of hidden treasures or curses. Yet danger followed. Shadows moved among the ruins, a tribe of island dwellers, cautious and suspicious of outsiders. They were agile and armed with primitive weapons, but their knowledge of the terrain gave them an advantage. Diego approached carefully, offering gifts and words of peace, while Nera observed from a distance, noting patterns in their behavior. Slowly, trust was built, revealing stories of the island's origin, old alliances, and hints about Alvaro's possible reach in these distant lands. Meanwhile, one of Diego's own began showing signs of treachery. The same whispers of betrayal from the river now emerged at sea, a sailor secretly plotting to claim the silver for himself, emboldened by the chaos of the storm and isolation. Nera confronted him beneath the moonlight, her dagger poised, tension crackling like the wind. The confrontation ended with him bound and left to reflect on loyalty, but the incident left a deep mark on the crew. They realized that danger was not only in storms or unknown lands, but also in the hearts of men. Weeks passed as the fleet navigated treacherous reefs, sudden whirlpools, and unpredictable currents. Each night, Diego pored over sketches of the stars, learning patterns to guide them, while Nera trained the crew in stealth, combat, and survival, turning them into a unit that could withstand both nature and betrayal. The silver remained safe for now, but the shadow of Alvaro's pursuit loomed over every decision as they prepared to leave the island. A scout returned with news that sent chills through everyone. A massive ship was approaching on the horizon, its sails black, marked with the insignia of Alvaro himself. This time, escape would not be simple. Every skill, every lesson from the rivers, storms, and island trials would be tested in the coming confrontation. The morning mist had barely lifted when the lookout shouted. On the horizon, a massive ship emerged, sails black as midnight, cutting through the waves like a predator. Every man and woman aboard Diego's fleet froze for a moment. Alvaro had found them. Diego climbed the mast to survey the approaching menace. The ship was larger than any they had encountered, armed with rows of cannons and a crew that moved with frightening precision. Yet he could see something more. The confident arrogance of a man used to victory, a glimmer in the captain's eyes that spoke of both cunning and cruelty. "Prepare for battle," Diego ordered. The crew scrambled, checking weapons, ropes, and the fragile lines that held their smaller ships together. Nera, standing by his side, whispered, "We can't face them head-on. We need the advantage of the island's secrets." She pointed to the jagged reefs that surrounded the island. "We can lure them into these waters. They won't know the dangers until it's too late." The first clash came suddenly. Alvaro's ship fired a volley of heavy stones and rudimentary explosives, tearing into the nearest vessel. Shouts filled the air, mingling with the crash of wood and the roar of the waves. Diego's crew returned fire with arrows, spears, and whatever projectiles they could manage. Nera moved like a shadow along the deck, cutting ropes, sabotaging rigging, and rallying the frightened sailors. As the battle intensified, the ocean itself became a weapon. Nera led smaller boats into narrow channels between the reefs. Alvaro's massive ship followed, unaware of the sharp rocks below. The water churned violently as the hull scraped and cracked, and a sudden explosion of air from trapped pockets of seawater sent the ship rocking. Some of Alvaro's men were thrown overboard, swallowed by the waves, or dragged into jagged rocks. But Alvaro was relentless. From his damaged deck, he signaled reinforcements, smaller vessels that had been hidden beyond the mist. The fleet was now caught between the treacherous reefs and the relentless attack. Fear gnawed at the crew, but Diego's steady presence and Nera's daring maneuvers inspired them. They fought not just with weapons, but with cunning, Fake retreats, sudden ambushes, and traps set in shallow waters. During a lull, Diego and Nera discovered a hidden cave among the cliffs. It was small but strategic, a vantage point to rain fire down on Alvaro's crew. With crude catapults, they launched barrels of flaming oil and sharp rocks onto the enemy, sowing chaos. Panic spread among Alvaro's sailors, and the tide began to turn. Yet, the battle revealed darker truths. One of Diego's own, seduced by greed, attempted to betray them mid-fight, opening a hatch that could have capsized a ship. Nera caught him in the act, and the confrontation was brutal. Loyalty and courage were tested as the fleet realized that survival depended not only on skill, but on unity. By sunset, Alvaro's forces were scattered, limping away with damaged ships. Diego's fleet, though battered and exhausted, had survived. The cost was high. Several men and women lost, their bodies claimed by the unforgiving sea. But the victory was more than survival. It was proof that strategy, courage, and the secrets of the islands could challenge even the most formidable adversary. As night fell, Diego and Nera stood on the cliff, looking over the restless waves. "This was only the beginning," Diego said quietly. "Alvaro will not forget, and neither will we." Nera nodded, sensing that the open sea held even greater challenges, and that the true test of their journey, and the Silver's fate, was still to come. After the battle, the fleet limped through the narrow channels, each wave a reminder of how close they had come to annihilation. Diego knew they could not stay near their current waters. Alvaro would return, and next time, he would be smarter. Nera, ever observant, pointed toward a barely visible coastline cloaked in fog. "I've heard legends," she said. "There's an island few know, untouched, hidden by reefs and mist. Some say it holds knowledge lost to time, and treasures no one else can reach." The journey was treacherous. The ships navigated through jagged rocks, strong currents, and sudden storms. At night, the fog thickened, hiding dangerous cliffs and the faint shadows of creatures moving beneath the water. Sailors whispered of the island being cursed, but Diego pressed forward. He trusted Nera's instincts more than any map. By dawn, the outline of the island emerged. Cliffs carved with symbols that glimmered faintly in the early sun. As they drew closer, the fleet noticed carvings of ships, stars, and strange figures etched into the rocks, weathered but unmistakable. "These markings, they're not just decorations," Nera murmured. "They're a guide, a warning, maybe even a history." They anchored in a hidden cove, accessible only through a narrow passage barely wide enough for a single ship. Diego and Nera, with a small group of trusted crew, climbed the cliffs to explore. The air was thick with mystery. Birds circled in patterns that seemed deliberate, and the wind carried whispers that sounded almost like words. Deep within the cliffs, they found the ruins of what appeared to be an ancient civilization. Stone buildings had crumbled, but mosaics and reliefs remained intact. One mural depicted a figure holding a chest glowing with light, surrounded by stars and oceans. Another showed men and women navigating treacherous waters with knowledge of currents and winds far beyond ordinary sailors. This could be the origin of the Silver's secret," Diego whispered, tracing the carvings with his hand. "These people understood the sea like no one else." While exploring a central temple-like structure, Nera discovered a hidden chamber beneath the stones. The entrance was nearly invisible, concealed by moss and vines. Inside, artifacts of polished stone, bronze, and silver glimmered in the torchlight. Some seemed ceremonial, others practical: tools, weapons, and star charts, carefully preserved. On the walls, inscriptions hinted at powers granted to those who could decipher the patterns. Control over tides, the knowledge of winds, and paths across oceans no ordinary map could show. But they were not alone. Shadows flitted at the edge of the ruins. Other seekers of the island's secrets, perhaps remnants of another fleet long lost to the sea. Diego signaled the crew to stay hidden. Nera, moving silently, whispered, "We have to understand this place, but carefully. There's more than treasure here. It's a test." As night fell, the island seemed alive. The moonlight reflected off hidden water channels, illuminating carvings that hinted at a cycle repeating through centuries. Fleets arriving, battles fought, some lost, others triumphant. Diego realized that this island was more than a refuge. It was a crucible designed to reveal the courage, wit, and loyalty of those who dared navigate its secrets by dawn. They had mapped parts of the island and decoded hints of hidden passages leading to the inner sanctum, where it was said the heart of the civilization's knowledge was kept. But as they prepared to explore deeper, a distant drumbeat echoed across the cliffs, a warning or perhaps a signal that others were approaching. Diego and Nera exchanged a glance. This was only the beginning. The island promised power, mystery, and danger in equal measure. And as they ventured deeper, the line between legend and reality would blur, revealing truths that could change the fate of the fleet and the very ocean itself by first light. The fleet remained anchored in the misty cove, silent except for the gentle lapping of water against the hulls. Diego led Nera and a small group of trusted crew toward the inner sanctum, an immense stone structure partially buried beneath centuries of earth and vine. Its entrance was marked by twin pillars engraved with spirals and celestial symbols. A chill wind seemed to rise from within, carrying a faint, rhythmic pulse, as though the island itself were alive. Inside, the air was thick and fragrant, like damp earth mixed with salt. Their torches revealed intricate carvings covering every surface. Sequences of animals, stars, and unknown symbols intertwined with ocean waves. Nera traced her fingers across a mural, then stepped back. "These aren't just decorations," she said. "They're instructions, rituals, paths, maybe even tests. Whoever built this wanted only the worthy to proceed." The first challenge appeared almost immediately. A floor composed of stone tiles etched with different constellations. One misstep could trigger traps. Diego carefully compared the carvings with the patterns in the mural outside. Slowly, step by step, they moved through the hall, each footfall a careful negotiation with fate. A soft click echoed behind them. Some tiles shifted, but fortunately, none of the deadly spikes below were triggered. The crew let out quiet breaths of relief. The second chamber was darker, filled with bronze mechanisms, gears, and levers. Ancient inscriptions hinted at the need to align symbols representing wind, sea, and celestial movement. Nera studied the mural again. "It's a map of the currents," she whispered. "We have to rotate these symbols in the order the ocean moves during the equinox." Hands trembled as they manipulated the mechanisms. A sudden rotation of the central gear caused a hidden staircase to descend into the depths. The air grew colder, and a faint glow emanated from below, illuminating carvings that depicted humans interacting with what looked like shimmering silver and star maps. Diego's eyes widened. This is the heart of the knowledge. The silver isn't just treasure, it's a key to understanding the sea and the sky together. But the sanctum was not unguarded. From the shadows, movements began, figures draped in cloaks, blending almost perfectly with the darkness. Diego realized that others had discovered the island, likely drawn by rumors of its power and wealth. The intruders moved with precision, clearly familiar with ancient paths, but lacking the full understanding Diego and Nera had begun to piece together. The tense standoff ensued. Diego raised a hand to signal his crew, but Nera stepped forward, holding a torch near a mural depicting warriors protecting the sanctum. Suddenly, symbols on the walls shimmered faintly, and the cloaked figures froze. Their movements halted as if some unseen force enforced a barrier. Whispered words, almost like a chant from the stones themselves, echoed through the chamber. "The island chooses," Nera breathed, realizing the sanctum tested more than intellect or courage. Diego understood the island demanded respect. They navigated deeper, finding rooms filled with ancient tools, star charts, and scrolls carved on thin metal sheets. Each artifact seemed to require careful observation and manipulation, as if testing not just knowledge, but patience, cooperation, and ingenuity. Hours passed like minutes, as they worked to decipher the patterns and align the artifacts. When they finally completed the last sequence, a hidden door slowly opened, revealing a central chamber. There, a pedestal held a small chest of pure silver, engraved with celestial patterns and runes that glimmered faintly in the torchlight. But it wasn't gold or riches that drew Diego's attention. It was the series of maps surrounding the chest, depicting ocean currents, hidden islands, and star alignments that no modern navigator knew. Diego and Nera exchanged a look of awe. The island had tested them, and they had passed. Yet the distant drumbeats from the cliffs still echoed faintly, a reminder that this sanctuary and the secrets it held were not theirs alone. Whoever approached next would force them to prove themselves again, and the sanctum's challenges were far from over. The central chamber's glow was hypnotic, casting long shadows across the card walls. Diego ran his fingers over the silver chest, feeling the cool metal hum faintly under his touch. Nera leaned close to the maps surrounding it, tracing the lines connecting star patterns to islands scattered across the oceans. "These aren't just maps," she murmured. "They're instructions. They show currents, tides, and even the safest routes between islands no one in the modern world knows exist." Diego carefully opened the chest. Inside were small metallic orbs, each engraved with a constellation. When held up to the torchlight, they projected faint beams onto the walls, highlighting symbols on the maps. It became clear the orbs acted as keys, overlaying star paths onto the charts, revealing hidden channels and secret coves. Nera gasped. This could change everything, not just trade, but exploration. We could reach places no sailor has touched for centuries. Hours melted into one another as they studied the maps. They learned to align the orbs with constellations visible in the night sky, which revealed invisible currents and underwater passages. Some islands were marked with symbols that hinted at treasures of knowledge, libraries lost to time, relics of civilizations erased by history, and even clues to the mysterious guardians who once inhabited these lands. But the island's calm was deceptive. Outside, a distant rowboat glided silently toward the cove. Diego glimpsed the silhouettes of strangers moving with purpose. They were skilled, experienced, and clearly aware of the island's existence. Rivals who had been following rumors of the sanctum's secrets. Diego and Nera realized the map's power would not stay hidden for long. "We have to move carefully," Diego said. "If they find the sanctum before we fully understand these maps, they could seize everything." Nera nodded, her eyes still tracing the complex constellations. "The maps themselves are a test," she said. "The island isn't just showing us the paths. It's teaching us how to think like it, to anticipate danger and read the world differently." As night fell, they prepared for a cautious expedition. Using the maps and orbs, they charted a course to a hidden island marked with a symbol resembling a silver crescent moon entwined with waves. Legends spoke of this island as a place where knowledge from vanished civilizations had been preserved, protected by natural barriers and clever traps. Diego and Nera knew that reaching it would require not only skill but courage and cunning, for the island would not surrender its secrets easily. Before setting out, they secured the central chamber, hiding the remaining orbs and maps. Diego carved subtle signs on the stone walls to mislead anyone who might follow. Then, with the first light of dawn, they set sail in a small craft, navigating by the secret channels revealed only to those who understood the maps. The journey was treacherous. Strong currents threatened to overturn their vessel, and hidden reefs lurked beneath deceptively calm waters. But each obstacle became a lesson, each decision a test of the knowledge the island had imparted. As they approached the hidden island, mist swirled around jagged cliffs, giving it the appearance of floating in midair. The air smelled of salt and something older, something untouched by time. Stepping onto its shore, Diego and Nera felt the weight of history pressing upon them. Ancient ruins jutted from the jungle, covered in vines and moss, but the carvings on their walls were eerily familiar, symbols echoing those from Sanctum. It was as if the island was extending its puzzle further, challenging them to continue proving their worth. Deep in the shadows, unseen eyes watched their arrival. The rivals had not given up. They were patient, calculating, and prepared to strike when the moment was right. But Diego and Nera had learned the island's first lesson. Knowledge was power, but patience and respect for the forces guarding it were just as vital. The adventure had only begun. Ahead lay puzzles, lost knowledge, and confrontations that would test not just their skills, but their very understanding of the world and the hidden currents that shaped it. The hidden island was alive in a way that felt almost conscious. Mist curled through the dense jungle, moving like fingers, guiding or warning travelers. Diego and Nera stepped carefully along a narrow path lined with enormous stone statues whose features had been worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. Symbols on the statues matched those in the central chamber. The same constellations, the same silver crescent intertwined with waves. "They left signs for us," Nera whispered. "Or tests." The first challenge came sooner than expected. A shallow lagoon blocked their path, its surface perfectly still. Engravings on the rocks at the shore hinted at a sequence. The symbols on the orbs in the sanctum aligned with certain stars. Diego adjusted one orb, letting the reflected beam strike a particular symbol carved into the cliff opposite. The water began to ripple and swirl, revealing a hidden stone bridge that had been submerged moments before. They crossed carefully, senses sharpened by the island's tension. On the other side, they entered a courtyard encircled by ancient walls etched with intricate patterns. At its center stood a massive stone door, sealed with mechanisms that resembled interlocking gears, but made entirely of carved stone. Nera examined it. "This isn't just a lock," she said. "It's a puzzle. It will only open if we understand the rhythm, the sequence, the logic the ancients used. This isn't a test of strength. It's a test of understanding." Hours passed as they studied the door. Each failed attempt triggered subtle traps. Stones would shift, spikes would rise, and whispers of wind would shift unnaturally, as if the island itself were observing them. Finally, after rotating the gears in a sequence dictated by the constellations on the orbs, the door creaked open, revealing a chamber filled with relics and manuscripts, some hundreds, possibly thousands, of years old. Diego ran his fingers over a scroll, its ink strangely preserved. "This is incredible," he murmured. "Records of civilizations that vanished without a trace, astronomical observations, and maps leading to even more hidden places. They were documenting everything, not just surviving." But the island offered no pause for celebration. From the shadows, a faint rustle announced the arrival of their rivals. Figures emerged from the mist, cloaked in muted colors, eyes glinting with calculation. They weren't ordinary treasure hunters. These were individuals who had spent lifetimes tracking myths, deciphering old maps, and learning survival in ways most couldn't imagine. Their leader, a tall figure with a scar running down one cheek, spoke without moving his lips, a gesture that seemed rehearsed. "Diego, Nera, you've done well to reach this point. But knowledge like this doesn't belong to amateurs." Diego stepped in front of Nera, instinctively protective. "We didn't come for conflict," he said, voice firm. "We came to understand, to preserve. We won't let you take this knowledge and misuse it." The rival's eyes narrowed, and with a subtle nod, the others moved in, weapons unseen but implied, their presence radiating lethal intent. Diego and Nera had anticipated confrontation, but the island's puzzles had left them unarmed save for the orbs and their wits. This was a test on a scale far greater than any stone door or submerged bridge. They would need to use everything the island had taught them, from reading the subtle signs in the wind to anticipating the currents of strategy and motion to survive. Nera gripped an orb tightly. "The island will help us," she whispered. "It brought us here. We just have to listen." Outside, the mist thickened, twisting around the courtyard like protective hands. The stone mechanisms that had opened the chamber shivered faintly, as if alive, signaling that the island itself was choosing sides. Diego and Nera realized that the battle ahead wasn't just between them and their rivals. It was a test of harmony with the island, an ancient sentience that would reward ingenuity and punish recklessness. The confrontation was about to begin. The mist thickened, curling around Diego and Nera like living shadows. The rival figures advanced silently, their movements unervingly precise. The scar-faced leader paused at the edge of the courtyard, scanning the chamber with an intensity that seemed almost preternatural. "The orbs," he murmured, "they are the key. And you." His gaze swept over Diego and Nera, cold and calculating. Diego clutched the orb tightly. "We don't want to fight," he said, trying to keep his voice calm, "but we will defend ourselves." A ripple of movement from the rivals answered, and without warning, they lunged forward. But the island itself seemed to sense the intrusion. Stones shifted beneath the rivals' feet, vines slithered across the ground, and the air vibrated with a low hum. Diego instinctively pointed the orb toward a carved symbol on the floor. A beam of light shot forth, striking the center of the courtyard and illuminating a hidden mechanism. Suddenly, stone spikes shot up from the ground in the rivals' path, forcing them to leap back. Nera seized the moment. She dashed toward a wall of ancient glyphs, tracing her fingers over the carvings. Symbols glowed faintly under her touch, revealing a hidden passage. "This way," she shouted, grabbing Diego's hand. Together, they sprinted into the narrow tunnel just as a rival lunged at them, only to be ensnared by a cascade of shifting stones triggered by the island itself. The tunnel wound deeper into the heart of the island, each twist revealing more ancient mechanisms, pressure plates, rotating walls, and hidden pits. Diego and Nera realized they had to work in perfect synchronization. Each orb became both a key and a shield, its light illuminating the traps while also signaling the correct paths. Behind them, the rivals adapted quickly, deciphering some of the island's patterns, but their intrusion triggered a chain reaction the ancients had left in place. A massive stone will began to turn above the corridor, threatening to crush anything beneath it. Nera's heart pounded. "We need to time this," she yelled. They moved in a fluid, practiced rhythm, ducking, leaping, and sliding as the wheel rolled perilously close. Finally, they reached a chamber that felt almost sacred. A shallow pool reflected the moonlight filtering from cracks in the ceiling, and in the center floated another orb, larger than the rest, radiating a soft, pulsating light. Diego approached it cautiously. As he lifted it, the chamber responded. The water glowed, illuminating intricate glyphs on the walls. Nera realized the glyphs told a story, a warning, and a promise. Those who respected the island's logic would be protected. Those who sought only power would be consumed by it. From the shadows, the rivals emerged again, more cautious now, but undeterred. "You can't hide forever," the scar-faced leader said. His voice echoed strangely, as if the walls themselves amplified his menace. Diego and Nera exchanged a glance. They knew the next move had to be decisive. With a shared nod, they placed the large orb into a carved pedestal at the center of the pool. Light exploded outward, sending shimmering waves through the chamber. The walls shifted, creating a labyrinth of stone that separated them from their pursuers. The island had intervened, but the victory was temporary. The rivals were cunning and relentless. Diego and Nera now understood that to survive, they would need to harness every secret the island had hidden over centuries. Its traps, its glyphs, its orbs, and its hidden consciousness. As the dust settled, Diego whispered, "This is just the beginning." The air vibrated with anticipation. The island had chosen them as its champions, or at least as its test subjects. And the rivals were still out there, waiting for their chance. The moonlight glimmered through the jagged cracks in the ceiling, casting elongated shadows that twisted like living creatures along the stone walls. Diego and Nera had taken refuge in a cavern deep beneath the island, one few intruders could reach. The air was thick with humidity and the scent of moss. Yet there was a strange energy here, a pulse that seemed almost alive, resonating with the orbs they carried. "We need to understand the island," Nera whispered, tracing her fingers along the carved glyphs. "It's not just protecting itself. It's guiding us if we learn its rules." Diego knelt beside the pool, the large orb from the previous chamber floating above the water. When he touched it, the light rippled outward, and the carvings on the walls began to shift, forming moving patterns that resembled mazes and arrows pointing in specific directions. He gasped, "It's showing us paths and traps. We can use them against them." Outside the cavern, the rivals moved with deadly precision, their footsteps barely making a sound. The scar-faced leader scanned the area with calculating eyes. "They think they understand," he muttered. "The island does not forgive mistakes." Diego and Nera spent hours, or perhaps minutes. Time felt distorted here, deciphering the glyphs, mapping hidden pressure plates, swing traps, and stone launchers. The island seemed to respond to their thoughts, pulsing lightly as if approving their understanding. Finally, they were ready. The rival party entered the first corridor. Immediately, the ancient mechanisms sprang to life. Stones shifted, forming walls that funneled the intruders into narrow paths. Diego activated a hidden lever, sending a cascade of glowing vines to tangle the rivals' legs. Nera directed beams of light from the orbs toward reflective stones, blinding them temporarily. The scar-faced leader snarled, adjusting his tactics, but the island anticipated his movements. A section of floor collapsed beneath him, forcing a jump that nearly unbalanced him, while swinging stone blades narrowly missed him. One of the younger rivals tripped into a pit, only to find themselves safely caught by an ancient netting mechanism, more a warning than a death trap, but enough to break their formation. Diego and Nera moved with fluid precision, almost as if dancing with the island itself. Left, then a jump over the stones, Diego called. Nera followed, using the orb to illuminate glyphs that revealed a hidden shortcut in a central chamber. They prepared their final defense. The room's walls were lined with enormous carved faces, eyes hollow but aglow with a faint golden light. Diego placed the orb in a central pedestal. The faces animated, their eyes flaring, and a deep rumble shook the chamber. From the walls, stone hands emerged, blocking the entrances and forcing the rivals into a confined arena. "This is it," Nera said, her voice steady despite the tension. "We turn the island itself into our ally." With a coordinated movement, they triggered hidden mechanisms. Spikes shot from the floor, stone pendulums swung with deadly accuracy, and walls shifted to create mazes that confused and disoriented their pursuers. The rivals fought bravely, but every step they took played into Diego and Nera's strategy. Guided by the island's intelligence by dawn, the chamber was silent. The rivals, exhausted and disoriented, had retreated into shadows they could barely navigate. Diego and Nera stood in the center, the orb glowing steadily between them. The island had protected them, but more importantly, it had taught them how to use its ancient power. Diego exhaled, feeling the weight of what they had learned. "We can't just survive," he said. "We have to master this. If they come back, we'll be ready." Nera nodded, a glint of determination in her eyes. "And we'll turn the island into the deadliest trap they've ever walked into." The orbs pulsed in harmony, as if the island itself approved. A long journey awaited, and the rivals were still out there, sharpening their own cunning. But Diego and Nera had a new weapon now. Knowledge, strategy, and an island that seemed almost alive. The tension had shifted. From this point on, it was no longer merely survival. It was a war, fought with ancient secrets and hidden traps. After the battle in the cavern, the island fell into an eerie silence, as though it were holding its breath. Diego and Nera moved cautiously through the twisting corridors, the orbs lighting their path with a gentle, pulsing glow. Every step seemed to echo with anticipation, as if the very stones beneath their feet whispered secrets meant only for them. Then, deep within the mountain, they stumbled upon a narrow tunnel, almost invisible, hidden behind a curtain of moss and roots. The walls were etched with symbols they had never seen before, curved, flowing lines that shimmered faintly under the orb's light. Nera traced one with her finger, and the wall itself trembled, sliding silently aside to reveal a hidden stairway descending into darkness. This This feels different, Nera murmured, a mixture of awe and caution in her voice. Like the island wants us to see this. Diego nodded, gripping his orb tightly. Whatever's down there, it could change everything. The stairway led to a massive underground chamber, unlike anything they had encountered. The walls were lined with towering statues of figures whose faces were serene, yet otherworldly. Their eyes, carved from a crystal-like material, reflected the light of the orbs with an almost sentient awareness. In the center of the chamber lay a circular pool of water, perfectly still, its surface glowing faintly with an inner light. Around the pool were pedestals, each holding strange artifacts, metallic instruments with unknown purposes, fragments of ancient maps, and crystals that pulsed with energy. Diego approached cautiously, peering into the pool. As his reflection shimmered on the water's surface, he saw something else. Visions of the past, of the island when it was alive with civilization, its people performing intricate rituals, communing with forces far beyond the modern world's understanding. It was a history of power, knowledge, and danger. Nera studied one of the artifacts, a crystalline orb that vibrated in her hand. "These aren't just relics," she said. "They're tools or weapons. Whoever built this place, they weren't human. Not entirely. And they left these behind, maybe for us to find, or maybe as a test." Suddenly, the pool rippled violently, and a voice, deep and resonant, filled the chamber. Not spoken aloud, but somehow inside their minds. "Those who seek the island's heart must prove they are worthy. Knowledge without wisdom is destruction." Diego exchanged a glance with Nera. They both understood. This was no ordinary power. If misused, it could destroy them or the island itself. But if mastered, it could make them untouchable. The chamber seemed to respond to their thoughts, pulsing and shifting subtly. Pathways opened along the walls, revealing hidden alcoves filled with ancient scrolls and artifacts that radiated raw energy. Some of the instruments hummed when touched, resonating with their orbs, creating patterns of light that danced across the ceiling. Hours passed, perhaps days, and they began experimenting cautiously, learning how to channel the energy of the artifacts. A shard of crystal in Diego's hand amplified his orb's light, allowing him to manipulate the cavern's defenses at a distance. Nera discovered a set of metallic rings that, when arranged in a precise sequence, could create illusions so realistic that even seasoned rivals could be fooled. But then, at the far end of the chamber, a massive stone door groaned open, revealing a dark corridor beyond. Unlike the rest of the chamber, this passage seemed almost alive, pulsing with an energy so intense that it made the air itself thrum. From the shadows came a figure, tall, cloaked, eyes glinting with knowledge and malice. The rivals had found them. Diego tightened his grip on the orb. Nera adjusted the artifacts around them. This was the true test. The island's power was immense, but now they had to defend it against those who had already proven ruthless, cunning, and desperate. The chamber seemed to hold its breath again, waiting to see if the new guardians would master its secrets, or be consumed by them. The cloaked figure stepped forward, and the dim light of the chamber revealed a face both striking and unnerving. Eyes that seemed almost liquid in their depth locked onto Diego and Nera. Its presence radiated authority, a centuries-old mastery of the island's secrets. "I've been waiting for you," the figure said, voice echoing inside their minds again. "You've learned the ways, but power without understanding is a curse. Are you willing to risk everything to claim it?" Diego's grip on the orb tightened, a nervous excitement coursing through him. "We've come this far. We won't back down." The figure extended a hand, revealing a small, intricate medallion, etched with symbols that matched the carvings throughout the chamber. "This is the heart of the island. To wield it, you must perform the rite of reflection. Only by confronting the truth of your inner selves can you channel the island's energy safely." Nera exchanged a glance with Diego. "Truth of our inner selves?" she whispered. "Sounds like a test and a trap." "No choice," Diego said, stepping forward. They followed the figure to a platform in the center of the chamber. Around the glowing pool, Concentric circles of symbols radiated outward. Placing the medallion in the center, the figure instructed them to step into the circles. The moment their feet touched the first circle, the chamber shifted. The statue's eyes glowed brighter. The water in the pool began swirling, and a soft hum grew into a resonant roar. Images flashed before them. Memories of fear, loss, betrayal, and hidden desires. It was as though the island itself was probing their hearts. Diego saw visions of the life he had left behind, the mundane world that never understood him, moments of weakness, times he had failed. Nera faced her own reflections, doubts, regrets, and a thirst for power she had never admitted even to herself. You must accept who you are. The figure's voice resonated again. Deny nothing, embrace everything, or be consumed. For hours, or perhaps minutes, time seemed meaningless. They confronted themselves. Fear threatened to overwhelm them, visions twisting into shadows that clawed at their minds. But slowly, they began to understand. The island's power wasn't just external. It was a mirror, amplifying who they truly were inside. When they finally opened their eyes, the pool of water shimmered with new energy, brighter and more alive than before. The medallion floated above it, spinning slowly. Diego and Nera felt a surge of strength, a connection to the island so profound that they could feel the heartbeat of the very mountain beneath them. The figure nodded, stepping back. "You are ready," it said. "But remember, power is a responsibility, not a toy. Those who are tempted to take more than they can handle do not survive the island." As they left the chamber, artifacts glowing faintly in their hands, Diego and Nera knew that their journey was far from over. The island had secrets yet untold, and forces, both human and not, were already stirring, aware that two new guardians had risen. They emerged from the tunnel to the surface, the sky above painted in shades of twilight. The air was thick with promise and danger. Somewhere across the island, other eyes were watching. The guardians were no longer merely explorers. They were part of an ancient legacy, now tasked with protecting a power that could rewrite destiny itself. As the first rays of the sun pierced the dense jungle canopy, Diego and Nera felt it immediately. An unfamiliar presence, subtle but unmistakable, moving through the foliage. The island had always been alive, but this was different, calculated, watchful, and filled with intent. From the shadows emerged three figures, their movements fluid and deliberate. Their garb was unlike anything Diego and Nera had seen. Long robes embroidered with symbols that glimmered faintly, almost as if alive. Each carried a weapon, curved blades that seemed to hum with latent energy, and eyes that mirrored the same intensity. As the cloaked figure from the chamber, one of them stepped forward, voice calm but commanding. "We are the keepers of the ancients. The heart of the island belongs to no one, yet we protect its balance. You should not have claimed it so easily." Nera tightened her grip on the orb she carried. "We didn't steal it," she said. "The island chose us. We've been tested, and we passed. Now it's ours to guard." The leader's eyes narrowed. "A test does not make you worthy. Only understanding, only discipline, only sacrifice. These determine who can wield the heart safely." Suddenly, the ground trembled as the other two guardians circled around them, their weapons drawn. Diego and Nera exchanged a tense glance. There was no room for negotiation here. The confrontation was inevitable. Diego stepped forward, focusing on the energy pulsing through the medallion. He raised his hand, and the air around them thickened with the island's latent power. The rival guardians reacted immediately, blades clashing with invisible force, sending shockwaves through the underbrush. The battle was a whirlwind of motion and energy. Diego felt the island responding to his emotions, his confidence growing with each movement. Nera, using a combination of agility and cunning, struck from the shadows, drawing upon lessons she had learned from the chamber's visions. But these new guardians were not easily defeated. They moved as one, anticipating Diego and Nera's every action, exploiting weaknesses the duo hadn't even realized they had. Every strike forced them to adapt, to push their connection with the island further, to trust in its guidance more deeply than ever before. Amid the chaos, the medallion began to glow brighter, resonating with the rhythm of their hearts. It seemed to respond not to their power alone, but to their unity, their shared resolve. Diego and Nera realized that the heart amplified not just personal strength, but the bond between those who were chosen. That a brilliant flash erupted from the medallion, and the battlefield froze for a moment. The rival guardians stumbled back, surprised by the surge of energy, while the jungle itself seemed to react, vines twisting and roots rising to form barriers. Breathing heavily, Diego and Nera stood side by side. "We're not alone," Diego said. "The island, it's with us." The leader of the rival guardians bowed slightly, a grudging respect in his eyes. "Perhaps there is more to you than we believed," he admitted. "But this is far from over. Others will come, testing your limits, forcing you to prove your worth again and again. The heart does not forgive weakness." As the new guardians vanished into the dense foliage, the silence returned, broken only by the whispers of the island. Diego and Nera looked at each other, exhausted but resolute. They had survived the first true challenge beyond the chamber, but they both knew the trials ahead would be even more dangerous. Somewhere deep within the island, unseen eyes watched, plotting the next move. And in the distance, a faint, ominous glow hinted at secrets yet uncovered, waiting to test the courage and the hearts of the two new guardians. The jungle around Diego and Nera grew eerily silent. Even the usual chorus of birds and insects seemed to hold its breath. The medallion's glow, still pulsing faintly from the earlier clash, guided them deeper into the island's heart, toward a place neither had ventured before. They arrived at a clearing dominated by a massive stone pedestal, carved with intricate spirals and glowing symbols that seemed to shift when observed from different angles. Atop it rested a relic, unlike anything they had encountered, a crystal orb encased in silver vines that writhed as though alive. The air itself vibrated, resonating with a hum that felt both welcoming and warning. This isn't like the heart," Nera whispered, reaching out cautiously. "The island is calling to it, or it's calling to us." Diego stepped closer, feeling a pull in his chest. "It's alive? Not in the way the heart is alive, but something else. Older, smarter, dangerous." Before either could touch it, a voice echoed, not from the air, but inside their minds. "Only those with courage, wisdom, and harmony may awaken me. Misstep, and all shall be consumed." The warning sent a shiver down their spines, but the pulse of energy from the relic mirrored their own heartbeat. They realized this was a test, not of strength alone, but of trust, intuition, and unity. Diego placed his hand on the medallion, and Nera mirrored him on the orb. The moment their fingers touched, the crystal orb began to stir, its silver vines stretching toward them like sentient tendrils, examining, testing. Lights danced across the clearing, forming visions of the island's past. Ancient guardians, forgotten battles, and rituals that had shaped the very essence of this place. Suddenly, one of the visions solidified into a figure, a colossal guardian made entirely of stone and vine, with eyes that glowed like molten gold. It moved slowly but with unstoppable authority. The island itself seemed to bend around its presence. "This," Diego stammered, "this is not alive like us, it's a protector or a destroyer." The relic pulsed violently, and the vision of the stone guardian roared, sending a shockwave through the clearing. Trees bent, leaves shredded, and the ground trembled under the immense force. Diego and Nera struggled to maintain balance, realizing that raw strength would not save them. Only their connection and their ability to synchronize with the island could prevent disaster. Nera took a deep breath. "Focus, Diego. We need to understand it, not fight it." They allowed the medallion and orb to guide them, closing their eyes and feeling the energy flow between the relic, the island, and themselves. Slowly, the stone guardian's aggressive posture softened, its glowing eyes dimming as if recognizing their bond. The deep, resonant voice filled the clearing, audible now both in the mind and in the air. You have passed the first awakening. The heart has chosen wisely. But beware, the balance you uphold will be tested repeatedly. Forces that desire power beyond comprehension watch, and they will come. The relic's vines retracted, returning to a dormant state, though the hum of power remained. Diego and Nera exchanged a look of both awe and apprehension. The island had just revealed a fraction of its true depth, and they had barely scratched the surface as they left the clearing. Shadows in the distance hinted at other forces stirring. Creatures, perhaps allies or enemies, moving with intent and purpose. The island's ancient pulse had awakened them, and the real journey, the one that would test courage, loyalty, and the very essence of their hearts, was only just beginning. As Diego and Nera trudged through the dense undergrowth, the jungle seemed to guide them, almost parting for their passage. The medallion and orb pulsed faintly, each beat synchronizing with their own heartbeats. It was as if the island itself had acknowledged their courage and was now leading them to the next revelation. Eventually, they stumbled upon the ruins of an ancient temple, partially swallowed by roots and vines, its stone walls etched with symbols older than any language they had seen. At the entrance, a carved stone tablet rested on a pedestal, its surface worn by time, yet some inscriptions glimmered faintly in the dappled sunlight. Nera ran her fingers over the carvings. This looks like a prophecy. I've seen fragments like this before, in old texts, but never complete. Diego peered closer. Fragments say the heart is not the beginning. It's a key. And this relic, it is the keeper of the threshold. Whoever awakens, it steps onto a path that decides the balance of all life on this island. They carefully translated the glowing sections of the tablet, revealing an intricate tale. When the twin lights awaken, the chosen shall unite the heart and the keeper. Only through harmony of spirit and courage of soul may the gate to the ancients be opened. Beware the shadows of desire, who seek dominion over what should remain sacred. Trust not only your strength, but your bond, for the island's will is neither cruel nor kind. It is truth itself. Nera's eyes widened. Shadows of desire. That must be those rival guardians who attacked us before. They want the heart and the relic for themselves. Diego's jaw tightened, and now we know why the relic tested us. It was preparing us for what's coming. As they examined the tablet further, a hidden compartment at its base clicked open, revealing a faded map. The parchment depicted not only the island, but intricate pathways marked with symbols corresponding to the heart and the relic. At the center was an unmarked location, a jagged mountain surrounded by swirling energy symbols. This has to be the next stage, Diego said. The gate to the ancients. Nera nodded. But look here. She pointed to smaller markings along the route. These aren't just directions, they're warnings. The island itself has set trials for those who seek the ancients. And these shadows, they're already aware of anyone who tries. A low rustle came from the temple's side. Diego and Nera turned sharply, hands on the medallion and orb. From the shadows emerged a figure shrouded in tattered robes, its eyes glowing a deep amber. The being spoke in a voice that vibrated like the island itself. Chosen ones, the prophecy stirs, and so do the shadows. If you hope to reach the ancients, you must first pass the trial of reflection. Only those who can face the truths within themselves may proceed. Diego exchanged a tense glance with Nera. Truths within ourselves. I wonder what secrets the island wants to reveal. The robed figure stepped aside, gesturing toward a path lined with towering stones that shimmered with faint energy. The path begins at dawn. Those who fail may awaken forces not meant to be disturbed. Choose wisely and walk with unity, or be lost to the shadows forever. As night fell, Diego and Nera set up a small camp near the temple, meditating on the day's revelations. The jungle around them seemed alive, whispering promises of power and warnings of danger. Sleep was elusive. Every rustle of leaves felt like a reminder that they were no longer just visitors. They were participants in a story that had been centuries in the making. Somewhere in the darkness, Diego thought he saw faint, moving lights. Eyes? Or spirits? Shadows watching, waiting. The island had opened its next chapter, and the real test of courage, wisdom, and bond was about to begin. Dawn broke over the jungle with a golden haze, illuminating the path of shimmering stones that the rogue figure had revealed. Diego tightened the strap of his satchel, feeling the medallion pulse faintly against his chest. Nera adjusted the orb in her hands, its surface glowing like a heartbeat syncing with her OW as they stepped onto the path. The world around them seemed to shift. The dense jungle faded, replaced by a mirror-like plain stretching endlessly in all directions. The ground reflected the sky above, the clouds moving in impossible patterns, and their own reflections shimmered beneath them, twisting and shifting subtly that a voice, calm yet resonant, echoed through the plain. To walk forward, you must first walk within. The first challenge came quickly. Diego's reflection separated from him, forming a shadowed figure that mirrored his movements but with a sinister grin. "You think you can lead, Diego?" it whispered. "The island doesn't care about heroes. It cares about survival. Can you trust yourself?" Diego froze, heart racing. Memories flashed, his failures, his selfish choices, times he had hurt those he loved in the pursuit of his own goals. The reflection stepped closer, growing taller, its form shifting into every person he had disappointed or feared he had failed. Diego stammered, trying to muster courage. But the reflection's voice penetrated his thoughts. "Face it, or remain trapped in this place forever." Nera, seeing his struggle, called out, "Diego, you're not alone. The heart and the keeper brought us here together. You don't have to face this alone." Her words anchored him. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and faced the reflection head-on. "I can't undo my mistakes," he admitted aloud, "but I can choose what I do next. I choose to protect, to learn, and to move forward." The shadow shimmered and dissolved into a mist, leaving Diego standing on the reflective path, stronger, steadier, and more focused. Nera stepped forward next, but the path reacted to her fears differently. The orb she carried began to swirl, projecting visions of her past, her family's struggles, betrayal she had suffered, and her own moments of doubt and hesitation. One vision was particularly sharp, her twin brother, whom she had lost long ago, reaching for her but fading into shadows before she could grasp him. Tears formed in her eyes, but she whispered to herself, "I carry their memory, not their burden. I am stronger than my fears. I am worthy of this path." The orb flared brightly, and the visions dissolved, leaving Nera calm, confident, and aligned with her inner strength. As the two reunited on the reflective path, the voice returned. "You have faced the shadows within. Now, face the shadows without." From the endless mirrors, dark forms began to rise. Tall, cloaked figures with glowing eyes, their presence heavy with malice. The shadows of desire had arrived, drawn to the energy of the heart and the keeper. Diego gripped the medallion. Nera held the orb tight. The shadows advanced, their forms shifting and merging with the reflections around them. Every step forward became a test of not just strength, but trust. Every attack from the shadows required perfect synchronization between them. Diego anticipating, Nera countering, their hearts and minds in harmony. Hours, or was it days, passed as they navigated the trial. The reflective plane twisted, creating labyrinths, mirages, and illusions. At one point, Diego found himself alone, chased by a shadow that whispered doubts about Nera's loyalty, about the mission, about his worth. But he focused, recalling her faith and the bond that had formed in this perilous journey. Finally, they reached the center of the reflective plane, a massive crystal monolith pulsing with the combined light of the medallion and orb. The shadows recoiled, unable to touch it. Diego and Nera approached, hands on their respective relics. Feeling the immense energy coursing through them, a booming voice resonated from the crystal. "You have proven courage, wisdom, and unity. The trial of reflection is complete. Beyond this lies the gate to the ancients, where your true purpose and the destiny of this island awaits. The mirrors around them dissolved into mist. The jungle reappeared, and the temple loomed ahead, its entrance now glowing with an ancient, welcoming light. But from the shadows of the trees, faint whispers lingered. The shadows of desire were not defeated. They were only waiting for the next opportunity. The jungle air thickened as they approached the temple. The path that had seemed natural now twisted unnaturally, with roots snaking across the ground like the fingers of some colossal, unseen hand. The temple itself loomed taller than any structure Diego had ever seen, its stone walls etched with symbols that seemed to shift if you looked at them too long. At the center, a massive gate pulsed with an otherworldly light, its surface smooth and silver, reflecting not the jungle, but visions of ages past. "Do you feel that?" Nera whispered, placing her hand on the gate. The medallion and orb resonated, their energy intertwining in a soft hum that grew steadily louder. Suddenly, the gate shimmered, and two massive statues emerged on either side, ancient guardians carved from the same silver stone, their eyes glowing a deep violet. They were humanoid, but far larger than any human, adorned in robes and armor of an impossible design. One raised a hand, and a deep, resonant voice filled the clearing. "To enter, you must first give what you hold dearest without hesitation, and answer what you seek without fear. Only then shall the path be revealed." Diego and Nera exchanged tense glances. The medallion and orb pulsed stronger, almost as if they were alive, reacting to the guardian's words. "I'm not sure I understand," Diego said, his voice trembling slightly. The guardian's gaze pierced him. "Understanding is irrelevant. The heart knows." Before he could react, the ground beneath them shifted, revealing a pit filled with faint, swirling shadows. From it emerged forms that looked like fragments of their memories. Diego saw a vision of his father, commanding and cold, then fading into a shadowy abyss. Nera saw her twin brother again, reaching for her and disappearing into darkness. "These are your attachments," the guardian's voice intoned. "To proceed, you must release them. Sacrifice what binds you to the past." Diego felt a pang in his chest. The medallion vibrated, almost screaming against his skin. Memories of his selfish ambitions, of lives he'd unintentionally harmed, and the fear of failure rose within him. But he took a deep breath and lifted the medallion high, feeling the weight of every choice he had made. "I release my fears," he said firmly. "I release my doubts. I step forward without regret." The pit of shadows hissed and recoiled, the memories evaporating into the air as the medallion's light flared brilliantly. Nera stepped forward next. Her hand tightened around the orb, which projected a vision of her past failures, the orphaned children she had failed to save, the lies she had believed, and her guilt over her brother's disappearance. Tears ran down her face, but she whispered, "I release my sorrow. I release my regrets. I move forward with courage." The orb's light merged with the medallions, forming a radiant bridge toward the gate. The guardians stepped aside, their eyes dimming, but their presence still immense. As they approached the gate, the visions of the past disappeared, replaced by something else, something older and far more profound. The gate's surface rippled, showing images of civilizations long vanished, of beings who had shaped the earth with knowledge that surpassed time itself, and of a great power hidden beneath the island, waiting to be awakened. Then, the gate spoke directly to them, its voice echoing not through ears, but through thought. "You have proven your hearts. Enter and embrace the knowledge and trials of the ancients. But know this, what lies beyond will not simply test your courage. It will test your very essence, your purpose, and the bond that ties you together. One step further, and the island itself watches you." A wind surged from the temple, brushing past their faces like a living thing. The jungle around them faded, replaced by an expansive hall, its ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow. Pillars of crystal lined the space, glowing faintly, and in the center floated a pedestal holding a crystalline artifact that pulsed like a heartbeat, clearly the source of the ancient's power. But as Diego and Nera stepped closer, a chilling presence filled the hall. Shadows, denser and more intelligent than those they had faced before, coalesced along the edges of the room, their eyes glinting with malice. The voice of the gate warned, "The shadows of desire are not your only trial. The ancient's secrets will tempt you. Some may never leave this hall unchanged." Diego glanced at Nera, sensing the same mixture of awe and fear reflected in her eyes. "We've come this far together," he whispered. "And together, we face whatever comes next," she replied, her voice steady, but her hand tightening around the orb. The moment their feet crossed the threshold, the air shifted. The crystalline pillars pulsed softly, casting strange shadows that seemed to writhe with intent. The artifact on the pedestal glowed brighter, as if sensing their presence, sending ripples of light across the hall that danced along the walls like living fire. But the shadows lurking in the corners didn't move with the light. They stayed, coiling and twisting, watching, waiting. Suddenly, the hall changed. The walls disappeared, replaced by a dense, twilight forest. Diego blinked. Nera gasped. This wasn't the island. They were standing in a place stitched together from memory and imagination. From the fog, figures emerged. Diego's father, stern and towering, appeared first, his eyes accusing. Behind him, faces of those Diego had wronged, those he had failed or hurt, began to materialize. You betrayed me," his father's phantom voice thundered. "You are weak. You cannot rise." Diego's chest tightened, and the medallion flared with a protective glow. He realized the hall was making their minds the battlefield. The shadows of desire weren't just illusions. They were feeding off guilt, fear, and longing. That Nera's own trial began immediately. From the mists, she saw her brother again, alive and smiling, beckoning her to follow him deeper into the fog. "I can save him," she whispered. But every step closer made the forest twist and warp, showing visions of failure, of her brother lost forever, a betrayal she couldn't undo. The orb in her hand pulsed violently, urging her to confront reality, not fantasy. Diego shouted, breaking the spell of the shadows surrounding his father's phantom. "I'm not the same boy you raised. I've made mistakes, yes, but I choose my path." The medallion shone brighter than ever, dissolving the illusions into sparks that floated away like embers. Together, they moved forward, but the trials intensified. The forest twisted into a labyrinth, walls of shimmering crystal reflecting their deepest desires back at them. Diego saw a world where he ruled, wealthy and powerful, free from any responsibility. Nera saw a reality where her brother was safe, and she had never been abandoned. Everything she had yearned for since childhood. The artifact on the pedestal pulsed again, and a voice echoed in their minds. To claim the knowledge of the ancients, you must choose truth over desire. Only the heart that sees itself clearly may pass. They hesitated, each tempted by what they could have, what they wished had been. But then, in unison, they shook their heads. "No," Diego whispered. "We accept what is, not what could have been." "I release the illusions," Nera said, her voice steady. The illusion screamed, a sound like glass shattering, then dissolved into nothingness. The labyrinth walls vanished, replaced by the hall once more. The artifact floated higher, now glowing with a steady, pure light. The shadows retreated to the corners, subdued but still watching, their eyes glinting. Diego and Nera approached the pedestal. The artifact wasn't just an object. It was alive, a pulsing crystalline heart. It seemed to sense their unity, their strength together, and slowly, the surface shimmered, revealing a doorway inside it. A faint energy pull invited them forward. Before they could step through, the voice of the gate whispered once more. "Beyond this door, the trials of essence begin. Your bond will be tested like never before. Only by facing what you fear, desire, and deny within yourselves can you hope to uncover the ancient's truth. Step carefully, for the path ahead changes with every thought and every heartbeat." Diego looked at Nera, determination etched across his face. "We've come too far to turn back now." Nera nodded, clutching the orb tightly. "Together, whatever waits beyond, we face it as one." With a synchronized step, they entered the doorway, and immediately the hall dissolved. Darkness embraced them, but from the blackness, shapes began to form. Not shadows this time, but beings of pure energy, reflecting every fragment of their soul. They had entered the trial of essence, where mind, heart, and spirit would all be tested, and where failing meant losing not just themselves, but each other. The darkness was thick, almost tactile, pressing against them as they stepped further. Shapes flickered at the edge of vision, glimmers of light that twisted into forms familiar, yet impossible. Then the energy beings solidified, surrounding them. Each was a reflection of a fragment of their souls. Guilt, longing, anger, courage, and unspoken truth. Diego's first challenge appeared as a mirror hovering midair. In it, he saw himself as a tyrant, wealthy, feared, untouchable. He wore a crown of gold and had legions bowing to him. But his eyes were hollow, his smile forced. "This is what you could be," the voice of the artifact echoed. "But at what cost?" Diego's heart clenched. The temptation to step into the reflection and claim the power was overwhelming. Yet every fiber of his being resisted. He remembered Nera's unwavering trust and the journey that had led them here. With a deep breath, he reached toward the mirror, and instead of stepping into it, he shattered it with the orb. The shards exploded into sparks, scattering the illusion. Meanwhile, Nera faced her own trial. A vision of her brother appeared, alive and calling her name from the edge of a chasm. She wanted to run, to leap to save him, but the chasm widened with every step, showing scenes of loss she could never undo. The energy beings whispered in her mind, "If you fail, he is gone forever. If you succeed, you betray yourself." Nera steadied herself, closing her eyes. She whispered, "I cannot change what was. I can only honor it." She held the orb out, and the light surged, collapsing the illusion into harmless motes that floated away. The hall shifted again. This time, the ground was a river of memories, flowing past them as vivid scenes of their past mistakes, triumphs, and forgotten promises. Shadows of past allies and enemies drifted on the water's surface, whispering, "You are not enough, you will fail, you chose wrong." Each whisper gnawed at them, threatening to break their resolve. Diego grasped Nera's hand tightly. "We face it together. Nothing else matters." The river responded. Waves of memory tried to pull them apart, but their bond created a bridge of light. Step by step, they walked across, the energy beings watching silently, their forms flickering with approval. Then came the final test, a colossal entity, a combination of all their fears, desires, and regrets. Its form was impossible to define, faces shifting constantly, arms reaching in every direction, a crown of thorns entwined with gold. Its voice boomed in unison, echoing every doubt and temptation. "You cannot succeed. You cannot remain whole. Give in or be destroyed." Diego and Nera stood firm, their hands intertwined. "We are not alone," Diego said. "We are each other's strength." Nera nodded, the orb between them glowing with blinding intensity. The energy beings around them merged into a column of pure light, encasing the monstrous entity. The entity shrieked, twisting and writhing, until it finally dissolved into nothingness, leaving only calm, warm light in its place. The darkness receded. The trial of essence was complete. The artifact floated before them, calm and radiant, as if acknowledging their victory. It opened a doorway within itself, wider and brighter than before. Beyond it lay realms untouched by time, where knowledge of the ancients awaited those brave enough to claim it. Diego exhaled, his shoulders sagging in relief. "We did it together." Nera smiled, eyes shimmering. "And we'll need that same strength for whatever comes next." The ancient secrets aren't just knowledge. They're trials that test everything we are. With their hands clasped, hearts synchronized, and resolve unshakable. They stepped into the artifact's doorway, ready to uncover the true wisdom of the ancients and to face challenges that no ordinary human had ever survived. And as they stepped through the artifact's doorway, the world changed instantly. The air shimmered like liquid light, and gravity shifted with every heartbeat. Mountains floated in the sky, rivers ran in loops that twisted back into themselves, and the horizon seemed endless, a tapestry of impossible geometry. Colors unseen in the mortal world pulsed and flowed, as if reality itself were breathing. "Where are we?" Nera whispered, her voice trembling with awe somewhere beyond time. Diego replied, gripping her hand tightly. "The ancients, they left this place to guard what we cannot yet comprehend." They began walking along a path made of translucent stone that seemed to ripple under their weight. With each step, faint whispers brushed against their minds, echoes of civilizations long forgotten, memories of creatures that had walked the earth before humans, and secrets that had been buried for millennia. Suddenly, the path split into countless threads, each one glowing differently. A voice, neither male nor female, resonated around them. "Every choice defines your path. Step wrong, and the realm will reclaim you." Diego and Nera exchanged a glance. "We'll stay together," Nera said firmly. Their first trial in the realm was a labyrinth suspended in midair. Walls formed and vanished. Bridges appeared only when their intentions were pure, and illusions tempted them to stray. At one point, Diego saw a vision of immense wealth and power stretching before him. Palaces, armies, treasures beyond imagination, but the path to it required leaving Nera behind. His heart screamed, but he stepped away from the illusion, holding her hand tighter. Nera faced a different challenge, the echo of her deepest regrets, her brother, her past failures, and the guilt she carried. Shadows morphed into shapes that taunted her, whispering, "You are weak. You will betray him. You will fall." Tears pricked her eyes, but she spoke aloud. "I'm stronger because of him, not in spite of him." Light radiated from the orb, and the shadows dissolved into a harmless mist. After hours that felt like years, they reached a vast, floating city, suspended on a platform of glimmering stone and light. Its streets were lined with statues of beings who seemed half human, half ethereal. Their eyes followed Diego and Nera, yet their expressions were unreadable that a figure approached them, a tall, cloaked being with a face that flickered like molten silver. "I am the keeper of histories," it said, voice echoing like a chorus. "You have survived the trial of essence. But here, knowledge and power are not granted. They are earned. Are you willing to sacrifice all you know of yourselves to understand truths older than the stars?" Diego and Nera exchanged a solemn nod. "We are ready," Diego said. The keeper raised its hands, and a vision unfolded before them. The rise and fall of ancient civilizations, beings of immense power guiding human evolution. The hidden lineage of bloodlines marked by rare gifts, and a delicate balance between creation and destruction. Every image, every memory etched itself into their minds, challenging their understanding of reality. Nera gasped, "So much knowledge, it's almost unbearable." The keeper's eyes seemed to pierce their souls. "Wisdom comes at a cost. Some truths will strengthen you. Others will threaten to destroy you from within. You must choose what to carry forward and what to leave behind." Diego swallowed hard, feeling the weight of countless centuries pressing against his mind. "We can't take it all," he murmured. "We have to protect what matters, each other, and the balance of what's left." The keeper inclined its head, a gesture of approval. "Then you are ready for the trials of the hidden realms, where every choice, every act of courage, and every truth you uncover will define whether you become mere mortals or something more, something the world has never seen." As the keeper vanished, the city transformed. Pathways of light stretched endlessly into the unknown. Diego and Nera stood at the edge, gazing into the heart of mysteries that few had ever touched, and feeling the first stirrings of power that could change the fate of humanity itself. Their journey had only begun. And beyond the horizon, shadows of even greater trials awaited. Trials that would test not only their courage, but the very essence of what it meant to be human. The floating city dissolved around them, replaced by a vast expanse of swirling mist and jagged islands suspended in empty air. Each island pulsed with energy, and glowing runes floated above the chasms like warnings. The keeper's voice echoed faintly. Only by facing your essence can you claim the power hidden in the realms. Step forward or be lost forever. Diego and Nera stepped onto the first island, which felt solid yet trembled beneath their feet. The air shimmered, and suddenly the ground split open, revealing an endless void. From the depths, voices rose, some mournful, some mocking, all unervingly familiar. Each voice called out their names, recounting failures, fears, and secrets they had never shared with anyone. Nera froze. It's showing us our minds. Diego clenched his fists. We can't let it control us. We move together, always together. As they ventured further, the terrain shifted again. A river of liquid silver flowed against the laws of physics, curling upward into a sky filled with twin suns. On its banks, creatures appeared, half human, half elemental, with eyes like molten gold. They whispered riddles and memories, tempting them to stray, to abandon the path, or to claim forbidden knowledge. One creature, appearing as a tall woman cloaked in flames, reached for Diego. Take my gift, it hissed, and the world will bend to your will. Diego resisted, recalling the keeper's warning. True power comes only through discipline and wisdom. He grasped Nera's hand, anchoring himself in their shared trust. The flames dispersed, leaving nothing but glowing embers. Nera's trial emerged as well. A vision of her brother appeared, trapped in a labyrinth of fire and shadow, silently begging for help. Her heart ached. Guilt and love surged together. To rescue him in the vision, she had to confront the deepest regret she had carried her entire life. Letting him face danger without her protection. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, I forgive myself. I will not carry this alone anymore. Light erupted from her hands, dissolving the vision, leaving her stronger, calmer, and more focused. The islands began to realign, forming a staircase of light leading to a colossal obsidian door. Runes etched into its surface pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Diego and Nera approached, and the door opened without a sound, revealing a chamber filled with floating crystal spheres. Each sphere contained visions, histories of civilizations that had risen and vanished, secrets of bloodlines marked with extraordinary traits, and even echoes of beings who had once walked the earth alongside humans. This is the chamber of truth, the keeper's voice whispered in their minds. Here, you must choose. Absorb the knowledge and bear the weight of eternity, or leave some truths behind to preserve your humanity. Every choice will shape who you become. Diego reached out to one sphere, and instantly, memories of ancient warriors, scholars, and mystics flooded his consciousness. He saw how their actions, small or great, had shaped the world. Each image was vivid, each lesson searing. He stumbled, almost collapsing under the weight of knowledge. Nera steadied him. She chose a sphere next. The visions showed women of power and cunning, leaders who had walked unseen paths to influence history. Their triumphs and sacrifices resonated with her own journey, illuminating choices she hadn't understood before. Hours passed, or was it days? Time seemed meaningless. When they withdrew their hands, they were changed. Their minds had expanded, their perceptions sharpened, yet the burden of what they had seen pressed against their souls. A final trial remained, a bridge of light leading to the heart of the hidden realms. But it was guarded by a shadowy figure whose form shifted with every heartbeat. Its voice was a distorted echo of Diego's own. Are you worthy? Are you strong enough to carry what you now know? Diego and Nera stepped forward, hearts pounding. Side by side, they faced the Guardian. The bridge shimmered, resonating with their courage, trust, and unity. The shadow hesitated, then dissolved into a cascade of sparks, leaving the path open. Beyond it lay the core of the hidden realms, a nexus where time, memory, and creation intertwined. A golden light beckoned, promising understanding, mastery, and secrets that could alter the course of history itself. Diego and Nera exchanged a glance. They had survived the first true trial, yet they knew, deep in their hearts, that the real tests were only beginning. The hidden realms would push them further than they had ever imagined, beyond fear, beyond doubt, and beyond the very limits of humanity. The golden light of the Nexus enveloped them, warm and blinding, yet strangely soothing. The air hummed with a resonance that seemed alive, as if the world itself was breathing through the chamber. Diego and Nera stepped forward cautiously, their hands tightly clasped, feeling the weight of every step they had taken to reach this moment. From the heart of the light, forms began to emerge, ancient beings of unimaginable presence. They were neither human nor fully elemental, but something in between, their eyes reflecting stars, oceans, and forests all at once. Their voices, though silent to the ears, thundered in the minds of Diego and Nera. You have come far, seekers. You have faced fear, temptation, and her deepest truths. But the final choice is yours. Will you take the mantle of the hidden realms, bear the wisdom of civilizations long gone, and carry their burdens to shape the world? Or will you leave, returning to your life unchanged, your hearts intact, but your destiny incomplete? Diego felt a pull in his chest, the temptation almost unbearable. To hold the power of knowledge, to see the threads of history and the secrets of existence. It was everything he had dreamed of and everything he feared. He glanced at Nera. Her eyes, steady and calm, anchored him. Nera spoke first, her voice resolute. We came here together. Whatever we choose, we face it together. But knowledge without restraint can destroy everything. The beings watched, their forms swirling like liquid starlight. Suddenly, visions of countless worlds flashed before their eyes. Civilizations rising and falling, heroes succumbing to greed, innocence lost to the corruption of unchecked power. And at the center of it all, a single truth revealed itself. Power without wisdom is a curse, but guided by compassion and restraint, it can shape a future worth living for. Diego nodded, understanding the weight of the choice. We take the wisdom, he said, but not for ourselves, not to control, but to protect. A tremor ran through the Nexus. The beings began to merge with the light, their energy flowing into Diego and Nera, not to dominate, but to harmonize with their spirits. Memories of ancient leaders, mystics, and guardians filled their minds, but now filtered through the lens of humanity. They could see the future possibilities, yet they felt no fear, only clarity. As the energy settled, the golden light softened, forming a path back to their world. But Diego and Nera were changed. Their eyes held the depth of countless lifetimes. Their steps carried the weight of responsibility, and their hearts burned with the knowledge that they were now part of a lineage older than kingdoms, older than history itself. They emerged from the hidden realms not as mere mortals, but as stewards of its secrets. The world around them seemed smaller now, yet more alive. Every rustling leaf, every flowing river, every whisper of wind carried meaning. They had the knowledge to guide, to protect, and to ensure that history would not repeat the mistakes of the past. Standing side by side, Diego and Nera looked at the horizon. The sun set in a sky streaked with colors no human I had seen before. They did not speak. Words were unnecessary. Their journey had ended, yet in truth, it was only the beginning. The hidden realms had chosen its guardians, and through Diego and Nera, its legacy would endure, quietly, wisely, and eternally. The story of the hidden realms closed here, but the echoes of its power, trials, and wisdom would ripple through generations, a reminder that courage, trust, and restraint are the true markers of destiny.